It's been tough sledding so far, but again, we said that about last year too. Tough day in practice for the number 3. He was right in the mix at the end of it.
This race may play right into his wheelhouse for that of Dale Earnhardt Jr., being that he certainly knows how to conserve tires, and that's what this race is going to be a lot about. It may also turn into a bit of survival. We saw that happen last year where things got a little bit chaotic in the closing stages. We'll see what unfolds in the 2023 edition of this race as well. Blake, it's been since September since we knew how a portion of this field would look. We've been here all week, and as Jacqueline mentioned in one of her pre-race hits, it's been unbelievable.
For those of you fans who are here on the property, we would remind you that those of you who are standing on the catch fence to please back up from the catch fence on the front straightaway. Again, for those fans who are excited to see these cars go around for 400 laps, we need them to back up from the catch fence, please.
Chief starter and John Spence, who we mentioned earlier before the start of the mini stock race. This is going to be a swan song for that of John Spence. Steve Zacharias came up to us beforehand and said this is going to be quite the mixed emotional night for that of John. He's loved the role and responsibility as being the chief starter here at the Florence Motor Speedway for several years, and he has put his heart and soul into it. And he is in a position now to wave one final green flag in his tenure as the chief starter at this racetrack is that of John Spence. And he is showing the field the 1-to-go signal as we are 1 lap away from the green.
Mentioned Sam Yarborough. He's had a couple of months to envision this exact scenario in his mind as he's the leader of our race. Josh Berry, Matt Cox, Casey Kelly, Kate Brown can certainly go to victory lane in this race. Can't forget about Ronnie Bassett Jr. Look throughout your top 10, top 12, Eric. I don't think there's a single name on there that we'd be surprised if they went to victory lane.
A lot of notables. Josh Williams starting 20th. Stephen Nasse off a Governor's Cup win outside row 12. The field is stacked with so many cars as we are coming through turn number 3 and getting set to get this race underway. There's some of the rest of your starters as we got 41 cars getting set to partake in the South Carolina 400 in 2023. Green flag is in the air. Sam Yarborough leads us down to turn 1. Yarborough trying to get the jump on Josh Berry to lead lap 1. He is clear of the Kevin Harvick Incorporated 62. Yarborough's teammate up to 3rd. Lap 1 to the 95 of the pole sitter, Yarborough.
And already we're going to see a much different race play out than what we saw in qualifying, as the pace is going to, what we would imagine, significantly drop off over what these cars were capable of running just a couple of hours ago. But for now, Yarborough leading the field back to lap 2. Berry looking content to ride in line. He's going to pull Matt Cox along with him in the 3rd spot.
Casey Kelly up in the 4th, and then you see the Hornet's Nest on the left side of your screen. That is Dale Earnhardt Jr. smack dab in the middle of it all after what was a subpar qualifying effort. 27th is that of Jr. as they run right now in the mix of Boo Dalton, who was a runner-up last night in the All-Pro race. And Blake, I would assume that Dale at this point is just biding his time as there's a car off the pace on the main straightaway. I believe that was Brian Barnhill who dusted the wall off. The race stays green.
Now that's Mark Wirtz, slow and off the pace at the tail end of turn 2 and limping down the back straightaway. We'll see if that Corvette can try and get all the way across for the longtime veteran and great supporter, that Keen's Corvette Parts.net machine. And you could see him pass by your race leaders there, trying his best to get down to the bottom. The rest of the field reacting, the spotters heads up as he may be able to make it all the way back around before getting to the pit area.
All the while, we got a battle for the lead. Josh Berry, fastest car in qualifying, had to start 2nd, and it's not going to take him long to work his way to the front. Coming around to complete lap 6, Josh Berry to the point.
And not much of a fight there put up by Sam Yarborough, who I think he knows how fast that 62 has been all weekend long, knowing who's behind the wheel, who's turning the wrenches on that race car. No shocker to see him up front here just 6 laps in. Left-hand side of your screen, you can look behind the battle of Brandon Pierce to the number 2 and all that he is trying to fend off right now. And this is where the real cat and mouse game really comes into play here, Eric, that yes, you want the track position. You're going to, the majority of these drivers, at least the ones that I talked to, are talking about going down to the bottom especially at this early part of the race, to save as much tire as possible. But then you have a couple that look like Josh Williams just there a moment ago, trying to utilize the top side to gain some track position. You saw Butterbean do it right there on Laney Bice as well.
Interesting to see that Josh Berry has elected that he wants to control the pace of this race up to this point. He's got a car length advantage over Sam Yarborough as things start to funnel out about single file throughout most of the top 10. With drivers trying to commit to what their plan is going to be in this first half run. Again, 125 laps. We'll see a break at lap 125, right at the cross flags point of this race. Berry, the leader, ahead of Yarborough, as heartbreak for the second year in a row for veteran driver Mark Wirtz, who is in the pit area and potentially out of this race.
And only able to make a handful of laps. Saw him earlier today and had a big smile on his face, was looking forward so much to having an attempt at this race, and unfortunately already has that car jacked up right now and looking to see if they can survey some of the damage. An unfortunate ending for him, but Eric, you look out over the rest of the field, visually you can see the amount of pace that they have dropped off since the opening couple of laps. They're running 18.4s in the mid 18-second bracket, even up front at the early part of this race, and Josh Berry has backed the pace down to 19.1s, 19.2s that they are clicking off. So already, that is not natural fall off. That is everybody collectively backing off a little bit, trying to save as much tire as possible.
We're also seeing everyone pretty much committed to the bottom of the racetrack. And as we've seen in most of the races that have taken place so far this weekend, we do expect the groove to widen out as we start to see things pick up in terms of intensity. Josh Berry, the leader, the first car potentially out of this race. Mark Wirtz, let's go to Jacqueline Drake for an update.
Mark Wirtz out of that number 55. Mark, what happened to your car there?
That last, right before we went green, trying to clean the tires up, I felt a little weird pop in it. We got going, car took up all right, it fired off good. It's just when I gassed it up going around Travis Truitt down here, something broke. It broke the ring pinion or something. It just shuddered real bad, pushed the clutch in. It wasn't the motor. Just left it neutral and something was banging around the rear end. So tough break for the Corvette Bars.net, Dunkin' Donuts, Little Joe's Auto, Mitsubishi 55, but can't thank Structure Mechanical and all the guys that help us out a lot, and the team. We tried, but parts failure got us tonight.
Mark Wirtz out early in South Carolina 400.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Last year was a brake failure. In the other two races that Mark Wirtz has competed in, the South Carolina 400 at Florence, he finished in the top 10. Just needs a little bit of luck. Hopefully it'll come back for him in 2024. No changes up front. Josh Berry still the leader. Yarborough and Matt Cox, a pair of teammates, second and third. Then Casey Kelly and Cade Brown as their single file throughout most of, if not all of, the top five. To drop back just a little bit to see anybody trying to peek out for position. But Blake, at this point, it appears we are at the juncture of the race where everyone's just trying to size themselves up for where they may want to be when they get to the end of this run to see what they really have.
Well, at least this early on looks a little bit almost like a Martinsville race. You would imagine that those cars that are in the middle right now looking for a way to get down, and there's a couple of drivers that are stuck up there on the top side. At least from our vantage point, you can see Carter Langley up there, Doug Barnes that's just up the road. You also have the number 13 car of Cody Kelly that's also kind of been stuck on the outside, and Josh Williams, who for a majority of this race has been running the second lane, at least for now. He tries to get around Brandon Pierce side by side with the young man and Tristan McKee right next to him.
Josh Williams been a very big public-facing story so far here this week for good reason. Newly announced deal with Colleague Racing, and that is a Colleague Racing prepared car. Here's a battle for position, bottom portion of the top 10. You saw a quick glimpse there at Brendan Butterbean Queen, who runs 8th. This the margin across the front runners. It is Josh Berry, Sam Yarborough, Matt Cox, Casey Kelly, your front four. As Berry continues to hold steady at the front of the pack, but not driving away, and that could be by design.
Well, and that's a communication that has to happen amongst driver, amongst spotter. You know, that's one thing that Zilish gave a lot of credit to Brad Newman, his spotter last night in All-Pro Limited late model victory lane, was how difficult it can be when you are up front to set that pace and look at the cars behind you. Yes, you want to be leading, you want to have that track position, but it can be so easy when you're up front that you're not looking in your rearview mirror and saying, okay, how hard is the rest of the field going? Now, somebody as experienced as Josh Berry, not going to be a worry for him. He knows exactly what he's doing behind the wheel of that race car. As we take a look further back in the field, a lot of too wide, and this is something we've really come to see in these South Carolina 400s, Eric. Not only are there 41 cars out here, but when so many drivers have a relatively similar agenda that they all want to go to the bottom, they all want to save tires, they tend to group up, especially in the middle portion of the field, and you can see that right there, still too wide throughout the rest of the field, but so far out front, have it figured out. That
pocket of cars we looked at was from about 20th on back. We saw battling for a position in double wide formation. Berry now navigating about a car length advantage, and obviously the move for Josh Berry to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2024 made big waves in terms of news, I should say, in the 2023 season. And Blake, perhaps one of the most impressive facets of what Josh has done this season is he has been thrown into 3 different Cup cars and organizations throughout the season as a super sub. Now he gets to find a place that he can call his own home, and the bonding that is going to be involved in potential success for next season, it's already started. They started running together as an organization and as a group at Hickory last week. It's continuing on here. Not taking them long to find their stride.
Well, again, I think Jacqueline made a great point that this is a partnership with Josh Berry and Rodney Childers, and something that they have been looking forward to for a very long time, looking at KHI and developing, of course, Rodney Childers, such a big part of building this program over the last year before they ever ran a race with Kevin Harvick in a late model stock in North Wilkesboro earlier this year in the Cars Tour. But Berry has been a part of this program, getting it ready and starting to flex those muscles and building that relationship. That's been the primary point between these two coming out and doing this. Not only is Josh Berry a great race car driver, he wants to come out here and win, but that is also the thinking, is that this will foment a relationship that will in turn lead to success in the NASCAR Cup Series next season. You can also say the same for driver on the left-hand side of your screen, Josh Williams, and his new venture into Kaulig racing that was announced earlier this week.
And again, that is a Kaulig-prepared car. The car that he's battling is that of Williams Sawalich, 2023 ARCA Menards East Series champion after winning half the races in the 8-race slate. Hard to believe, and doing some of the back-end work on his career. This is his first South Carolina 400 at Florence, but he is no stranger to marquee short track races. In fact, he won the All-American 400 at Nashville a little over a month ago. As that of Sawalich, got a lot of work to do so far here tonight. Still running outside of the top 20 by 1 spot in 21st. With a little bit of a tap there from behind by Brandon Pierce in the Lee Pulliam Performance number 2.
And Lee Pulliam Performance, especially late in the going here at both the Cars Tour race and the Icebreaker a little bit earlier on this year. Those cars so good, and especially that coaching from Lee Pulliam. I was talking with Butterbean a couple of months ago before the locked-in 150 at this race, and how much that Pulliam can really coach his drivers on, hey, we told you guys not to go too hard right now, and Butterbean had to come over the radio at the Hampton Heat earlier this year and said, trust me, I am saving. I'm just that good. Wouldn't be shocked to see that number 2 car, Braden Pierce, who was talking with him earlier today, felt very confident in how he could race forward in this race. Brought a practice set of tires, and in fact, brought a flat tire from Caraway to initially practice on this, so was trying to find the balance a little bit through a couple of the practice sessions today versus what they ran yesterday.
Got a battle developing inside the top 10. This is for 6 on the left side of your screen. Brendan Butterbean Queen, who won this race last year outside of the 03, and Ronnie Bassett Jr., who this race seems to be right up his alley. He is known for being strong on tracks that are super abrasive and require a lot of patience in terms of how these drivers are working the throttle all night long. Bassett celebrated a podium place finish here in the Cars Tour sanctioned event earlier this season, and he was very fast in qualifying as well, although he just lost the spot to Butterbean. He's back to 7th as that of Bassett.
And a little more courtesy given between these two than what we saw at the end of New River All-American Speedway. Bassett went all out to try and win that race, but I don't know if there's anybody in the country right now that could say that they are as hot of a team right now as Butterbean. How he was able to close out that Cars Tour season with a pair of wins, did it all by leading every lap, the pole, and the race in those couple of events, and what a full circle moment this is for Butterbean after the year he has had. This is where he put his name on the map in the South Carolina 400 last year. He went beyond just the guy that could be really good at Langley, could show up to these big events with a fast car, get the job done, and I have to imagine that he wants to do more of the same and end up in a Waffle House at the end of the night.
That's the winning celebration for that of Butterbean.
10 minutes away, it's not far.
He's already got it mapped out. He may have memorized how to get there by now because he's done it before. Berry continuing to negotiate what is a half a second lead over the pole sitter and locked in 150 winner Sam Yarborough. And reigning, or I should say current track champion, Matt Cox continues to ride third.
You know, one of the biggest movers that we've seen so far, we continue to see shots to the top 5, but you can see not much maneuvering up here amongst Berry, Yarborough, and Matt Cox. So many seasoned veterans. I mean, look at Kelly that's up here in the top 5, Cade Brown. I mean, these are the best of the best, particularly when you talk about racing a late model stock at Florence Motor Speedway. And one of the few that we've seen kind of make a hard charge to the field. And I say that, he started in the middle portion of the pack around the 15th position. That is Cody Kelly. Moved up about 10 spots from where he started in this race. Finds himself in the 8th position in that number 13 car.
Berry still out in front of this race. Took the lead away, coming around a complete lap number 6. Again, this first stretch of the race going to go 125 laps. Berry, Yarborough, Cox, your front 3. Casey Kelly to 4th. Cade Brown won the fall brawl 1 week ago. Now out here trying to get himself another marquee short track event in the latter portion of the calendar year. He's up to 5th in the 23. And that's your top 5 as things stand.
I think as this race goes on, you have to see the gap that Berry was able to gain there over a lap or two over Sam Yarborough. Is that too much, right? Is that something that his spotters perhaps telling him, hey, we need to back up a little bit? You're stretching out. Now, there is going to be lap traffic that's up the road. It's about a straightaway or so as we've worked procedurally through these opening 44 laps, and that was kind of the thinking, right? Talking to many of these drivers, they really didn't anticipate a ton happening in these opening 125 laps, and so David Roberts has a lot happening. He had his hands full off of turn 4 and may have brushed the wall on the outside of Brandon Pierce.
You saw right there just how quickly it took for the leaders to pass that full field speed shot that we delivered you there down the front stretch. The leaders are catching the tail end of the field, and as Blake mentioned, that's usually where things could get a bit interesting. Things start to get a little bit more physical from drivers and cars who want to stay on the lead lap. Also is when you start to see drivers who may be trying to conserve equipment get forced to have to go.
And we saw that in full function last night, right? The All-Pro Limited Late Model race. You see Clark Houston, who got as big of a lead as I've personally seen covering these races at Florence Motor Speedway, was roughly 8.5 seconds or so in front of the rest of the field. Don't think we'll see that here tonight, as so many of these veterans know exactly how to approach this race at Florence Motor Speedway.
All the while, Josh Berry is quickly starting to catch up the tail end of the field. How about the second place runner in that of Sam Yarborough? 2007 Myrtle Beach 400 winner. As we mentioned, he started on the pole in this race by virtue of the win that he had in a locked-in 150. He led more than half of this race 1 year ago, 103 of what was a 200-lap contest at that of Yarborough. Yet the race has seemingly got away from him, even when he has had such a strong car. Yarborough sits P2 for now. Still a long way to go in this race as the battles continue throughout the pack. And Berry is now on the same straightaway as the tail end of the field.
You have to wonder for Sam Yarborough. Yes, qualifying here was certainly a bigger talking point coming into this race. Thinking that we were going to cut some cars out ends up not being the case as we started all 41. But even not having to worry about that, not take the time during the practice sessions over the last couple of days to make a mock qualifying run. It has been just all about how can we set up this race car for the race. Now, that's something he's done here time and time again, but I'm sure that that extra time is very beneficial at this point.
Heartbreak for Boo Boo Dalton. He was a late add to the field, runner-up in the All-Pro race last night. He is pulled down to the pit area and back to his hauler. His race is over 3 wide with Cars Tour champion Carson Quapple on the bottom of Laney Bice, who bounces off of Trent Barnes off 2.
And I think cooler heads prevailed there, but very tight. This is what you can see here in the middle portion of this field. Laney Bice, great honors for her, being named the 2023 recipient of the Wendell Scott Award just recently, and can definitely hold her own. Ran very well at Caraway in the Cars Tour finale. As somebody who knows how to get around this place very well, and they even showed out earlier in March when that series came to visit this racetrack. A superb effort from her put her in a really good position. And we talked earlier about Riley Gentry, especially in qualifying. what a great effort that he had in that 09 family-owned bunch, as you can look climbing out, and it was an emotional second place for Boo Boo Dalton last night, and unfortunately for tonight, it's going to come to an early end, and I think you can see the emotions even right now.
Boo Boo, one of the benefactors of the track decided to start all competitors. It was an easy decision to make, to shift their focus to this race. Actually had a top 10 finish in this event last year and was potentially biding his time before a mechanical problem, and he's not quite sure of what their 2024 plans are just yet. Well, Blake, we mentioned that Josh Berry was catching the tail end of the field quite quickly, and that seemed to take a little bit longer than anticipated because everybody has somewhat upped their game a little bit. And the first car that's going to come under fire to that of the race leader is Paul Owens in the 30.
And this is typically what we see, that as soon as that leader starts to catch the tail end of traffic, the lap times are starting to pick up for many of those drivers who are taking this opportunity to save and conserve, although this race has just flashed by here, Eric. We have two 125-lap segments. We're nearly halfway through that first portion of the race. So when you talk about saving tires, well, at a certain point, you're going to have to start pushing and kind of get a gauge on where you want to be when we approach the second half of this race. And I think you said it well. This is a dress rehearsal for the second half. So do you take the second half of this stint to really learn, hey, when can I start pushing? How easy will it be to pass late in the run? What adjustments do I need at this part of the race? As we take a look at Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is pretty much just settled in the position that he's running for now, 24th, as he almost gets into David Roberts there off of turn 2. And he has been pretty much locked in with Brandon Pierce here, the Elite Pulling Performance Machine. A long line of cars that, along with him, have just kind of been running around in a parade here on the inside, just trying their best to have something for the second part of this stint.
And he's in good company. Just a handful of cars further ahead of him. We mentioned the ARCA champion, William Sawalich, as Junior gets a drive there. That's Doug Barnes in the 88. The Ferrari. Oh, Sawalich almost got squeezed to the fence, and Junior had to make evasive action.
Well, and a couple of cars right there, and both Barnes and Earnhardt, who had some nose damage that may have resulted from part of the track coming up. Saw a picture yesterday of Trent Barnes' grill cover. He was practicing yesterday as he slides up the racetrack after a bump from Sawalich. May not have appreciated that too much, where he had part of the racetrack go entirely through the grill cover. His water temp was 180, and he was spewing water, so they had to replace the entire radiator on that car. And Dale Earnhardt Jr., second practice today, pulls it in with a significant amount of nose damage, but as you can see, they've done a lot of handiwork on that number 3 car to put it out here and in better condition for this race.
Into the top 20 for the first time tonight is a 3 car. For our viewers at home, you saw that brief puff of smoke out of the exhaust of the right side of the car. Nothing to be alarmed about. That is just something that has become a bit of a trend for some of the very fast and competitive late model stock cars that we see races. We got a caution. Yellow flag is out for the first time in this race, 62 laps in. And we are not quite sure yet.
Hearing it may be Zach Miracle, who may have taken a trip off the racetrack. So we don't see that number 32 car pacing around. Just at the quarter mark of this race, we are slowed by the caution flag for the first time.
Track crew starting to work their way over to the scene. Again, one of the more interesting facets of this venue is that there is no outside retaining wall, and it looks as though, based on our vantage point here in the tower, I believe that Zach Miracle has come back from the woods to rejoin the field. He's on the front straightaway driving by us here now. But nevertheless, it was enough of an off-track excursion to slow this field for the first time tonight. You know, Blake, we talk about this racetrack, 0.4 of a mile. They describe the corners as being progressive in terms of banking, but the most unique characteristic is no outside retaining wall here at the venue for most of the facility. Of course, on the front stretch, where you separate the fans who come out to the races and those who are partaking in the races, there's a concrete retaining wall there. But through turns 1, 2, down the back stretch, turn 3, beginning of turn 4, there's no outside barrier, and that is something which many drivers will tell you they prefer. It's the racing surface and racing groove is not all that wide, so if you were to spin a car broadside, having an extra escape route is something that these drivers seem to embrace. Unfortunately, every now and then, things can go a little bit astray, and we've seen a couple of cars go rogue from the racing surface. One last night that went out of the ballpark in a big way. But nevertheless, it's one of the most unique characteristics of this facility, and it appears to be one of the reasons why we are slowing this race for the first time tonight.
Well, you'd imagine as Miracle went off right there, you know, he's able to come back on. He's able to keep driving that car, and although it may be a little dirtier in the cockpit of that car, all things considered, it's going to be able to come out okay, and that's what the drivers love about this venue, is being able to have a little bit of wiggle room and a lot of space, that if something does happen off of 2 down the back straightaway, which we see a number of times here at Florence Motor Speedway, that there's a lot of wiggle room to be able to maneuver your car around it, and also provides, I think, Eric, something that's unique in that those drivers that are really able to make that top side work. Yes, there is a line that if you go over, you're going to cross it, but it allows those drivers to get brave. You know, running the wall is certainly one thing, but if you hit it too much, you're going to damage your race car. Here at Florence Motor Speedway, you go up top, you go up to the cushion at this racetrack, if you want to call it that. You have the ability to be on the razor-thin edge, but you don't have to necessarily worry about damaging your race car in the same token. So it allows these drivers to really showcase, okay, if I can go up there, I can get the job done, and if I overstep it, I'm still going to have a race car that I'm not going to have to pay for after it.
That's a great point. One of the best parts about watching races of this caliber is watching drivers try to find their limits. What's acceptable to them as a driver, what's acceptable to their race car. Florence allows you to have a little bit more breathing room by the layout and nature of this facility. Report trackside from Jacqueline Drake, who gave us an update on that of Boo Boo Dalton. It was a broken sway bar that took one of our top 10 finishers from 2022 out of competition tonight. He will unofficially be scored in 40th. Trent Barnes down in the pit area as well. It appears as though they are bringing some attention to the right rear of that race car. Also, we saw the 71 of Katie Hedinger come down for quick service and attention after Hedinger had been running in the 36th position. Now, Trent Barnes was a little bit further up the field, and we did think that we saw a little bit of contact and some racing at the midfield. And they are checking things over there on that one machine before we get this field reset.
Again, he may have had a little contact with the outside wall off of turn 4. Hedinger believed that she was still on the lead lap as she did not go a lap down. I believe it's Stacy Puryear, at least according to timing and scoring, would be the official free pass as a result of this caution. But you almost have to give credit, Eric, that this is exactly what you would want if you were at the tail end of the lead lap, to be able to save as much as possible, have a caution, and be able to reset your track position. But for more, let's head down to the pits with Jacqueline Drake.
Down here in the pits at number 1 of Trent Barnes. All hands on deck for this number 1 of Barnes as they went around and they checked the tire pressure and discovered that the right rear tire seemed a little bit low. We have track officials all around the tire right now seeing if it is an approved flat. They have to approve it in order to change it. Team's going to put a new right rear on that, as well as making a little bit of an adjustment. But track officials are going to continue to look at this right rear tire. If this is not an approved tire change, Barnes can be penalized. We will find out here soon as the number 1's going to join back to the back of this field.
Thanks, Jacqueline. You see the officials there doing their due diligence in order to make sure that this is going to be a fair change for that number 1 car, as they continue to look over that Hoosier rubber that came off of the back end of the Maryland native. We are coming around to the 1-to-go signal next time by.
It's a hot tire. Well, and I think you see there exactly why it's so important that we want these race cars to be out on the racetrack, but also being able to replace a tire after 60 laps at Florence Motor Speedway, where it's a cheese grater of a racetrack, could be a potentially huge advantage if it's not a flat tire. So they continue to look at that tire, and we'll see what the official word is from the crew. But nevertheless, Barnes, as a result of making that adjustment and change, will have to go to the tail end of the field.
The irony of the timing of this caution, again, we are going to have a race break at the halfway point, lap 125. This caution comes pretty much at the halfway point of the first stint of this race. We'll be pretty much halfway through this first 125-lap segment. 62 laps complete. Josh Berry, Sam Yarborough, Matt Cox, your top three. We're trackside. The tire change on the one car was approved. He's going to be able to try to work his way back to the front. Here we go. Back underway with Berry and Yarborough on the front row. Berry, the leader on the bottom side.
Clean through the rest of the field, but Yarborough going to hang on the right rear quarter panel right now of Josh Berry. May find some solace in his teammate letting him down, and indeed that's what's going to happen. Looks low, and Matt Cox will let that 95 down to the bottom. Is almost contact for the race lead. Berry a little bit sideways, but able to drive off the corner away.
Yarborough gave him a chance to save the car there. What was the battle for the lead as we've got trouble. Turn two, a car backwards, and it looks to be one of the cars that just came down the pit lane under the most recent caution, and that's Katie Hettinger. We saw Hettinger come down for service, restarted towards the tail end of the pack. It's been an exciting last couple of weeks for that. For Katie Hettinger. Last week became the first female driver ever in Carolina Pro Late Model Series history to win an event that sanctioning body holds. As a matter of fact, we caught up with one of the voices of that series, Terry Radford, who's here this weekend, and he went on to explain how big of a deal it was for all of those who were there in attendance. And she backed that up by going on to the Skip Barber Racing School at Road Atlanta and learning how to be better on road courses. Unfortunately tonight, though, that car just has not had the pace we are accustomed to seeing out of her, at least not to this point in the race. Fortunately for her, though, she got away from that incident down there in turn two without much body damage.
Well, again, and she's somebody that's been around these type of racetracks before, but certainly an experience for her to be able to come to this race, participate in the South Carolina 400 yet again, and like you said, just continuing to put the building blocks together for her in her career.
Unofficially, we did not get a lap in under green, so there's still only 62 laps that have been turned so far. Hettinger has rejoined the tail end of the field. All the while, the number 99 of Stacy Puryear has come down the pit lane. And he is receiving some attention from his crew as Josh Berry continues to navigate this field under the yellow flag. We did see a little bit of contact in the race for the lead, and I'm curious if that was perhaps Yarborough just getting back to the power a little bit sooner than what he thought Berry would do as the leader. But once the contact was made, you saw Yarborough lift immediately to allow Berry a chance to gather it up and not receive any more pressure.
I think you could see off the corner how much drive that 62 had, and again, that's kind of the tug of war, I guess it is, with the throttle pedal off the corner at these races. And you know, you talk to so many of these drivers, and it is difficult to do what these drivers are doing, to not even be full throttle or even close to it on these straightaways at this juncture of the race. It's a unique skill set that you really only get at tracks like Florence Motor Speedway.
2 laps to go before the restart with Josh Berry, Sam Yarborough. They'll start to elect their starting positions. Let's get an update trackside from Jacqueline.
Yeah, a quick update on the number 99 is Stacy Puryear, who came down and had a few more adjustments. That number 99, they said they were extremely struggling after their qualifying run. They completely did an overhaul between the break of the other feature events and sent it back out, but still trying to understand the handling just a little bit stronger on that number 9 for Puryear.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Puryear, 5 prior Myrtle Beach 400 appearances. Best finish of 22nd. Did it twice, 97, 99. First time we've seen him in the Florence running of this legendary race that spans 31 years. South Boston, Virginia native will rejoin the tail end of the field as we will see the one-to-go signal this time through.
So does Sam Yarborough want the lead, or can somebody who's made up some ground behind them? We mentioned some of the drivers who have started to work their way towards the front of this field, and Kelly in the number 13 has his twin brother right now on the outside of the second row in the 4th position as well. And also a couple other drivers that have been kind of nestled together but have slowly worked their way up towards the outskirts of the top 10. Carson Quapple, rather. Caden Honeycutt side by side right there for about the 5th or 6th row as they line up. They've been kind of making their way by some cars recently here.
We're going to try this again. This will be a second attempt at a restart with 62 laps complete. Josh Berry inside the white 62. Sam Yarborough outside the red 95. Back underway. Halfway break coming about 63 laps from now as Josh Berry gets another good launch on the bottom. A little bit of a slide in the back end of the race car there. Yarbrough and Cox trying to clear themselves for second and third respectively. Berry back in command. The battle is for third with that of Casey Kelly now falling just out of the vantage point on the right side of your picture, allowing Cox to get up through on the bottom. The 23 of Cade Brown, the 03 of Brendan Butterbean Queen trying to work the high side to get up closer, maybe into the top 5.
And Butterbean doing everything he can to try to make up as much ground as possible, kind of utilizing that middle lane. Been one of the few that has really been able to start to make his way towards the front of the field. Doing so, Brown on the bottom, going to ride just in line, not going to give Queen a chance to get down. The Queen to the outside, looking for a spot in the top 5. He's easily going to have it off of turn number 2. So Butterbean, another driver, talked about his qualifying. The fact he started 17th in this race last year did not deter him from going to victory lane. Pretty much started in the same position tonight with 16th that Butterbean rolled off the grid. And fifth's not enough. He's going to look for 4th as well on the outside of Casey Kelly.
The question now may be coming, what did Butterbean do in the first leg of this first half of this race? And is it time for that rubber band effect to start showing itself a little bit, as this is going to be a bit of a wash, rinse, repeat when we get down to the second half. Butterbean outside of that of the number 16K of Casey Kelly. And he gets a good drive off of turn 2 to take the spot away. More intense racing happening on. This is a little bit further out of the, oh boy, Laney Bice and the Carroll Speed Shop cars are going to split her.
And Milliken did a great job there lifting as Bice was sideways, drifted up the racetrack. And we've seen that a number of times, haven't we, this weekend? Chasing that car off the bottom, loose, and pretty much used at least one of those Carroll Speed Shop cars in 57s to be able to ease her way back down to the bottom. Milliken checks up. And as far as pace is concerned, we talked about the field running 19.4s, 19.5s just about 10 laps into this race. That has picked up to about 19 flats or so. Queen able to make his way by for 4th as well.
Starting to see some cars venture up to what is a third lane over on the outside of turns 1 and 2, and that was the number 5 of Carter Langley, who is on the left-hand side of your screen battling with another young talented racer in Tristan McKee. Langley, the South Boston champ, is trying to do what he can in order to move further forward as we've got heavy rain. Oh, trouble, back straightaway. One car around and into the inside wall off of turn number 2. And I believe the chaos may have started down in turns 1 and 2 as the T2 car of Travis Truitt got off the racetrack in turns 1 and 2. And that appeared to jumble up some of the cars at the bottom portion of the running order. And when we looked up, we saw one car go sideways. We are waiting now to confirm. Also, it appears Trent Barnes is facing backwards at the entrance of turn 3 right there. So Barnes definitely one of the cars that was involved on the back stretch. Tough to tell from our vantage point, but we do now see a car leaving off of the scene there on the back straightaway, and that is one of the 18s in the field. I believe that might be that of Truex Miranda. We'll confirm it when they come back around.
I believe it was that 18 car that went around in the middle of the back straightaway and kind of a wreck that continued. You mentioned Trent Barnes and a couple of cars that have kind of experienced some issues in the back part of this field, running into problems yet again out on the racetrack. And we'll have to see what the damage is. It doesn't look like Barnes is too hurt. There you can see David Roberts. It's also the tail end, but not involved in that incident.
Behind him is Miranda, who was the car that spun, and even though it looks like he made contact with the inside retaining wall, it doesn't look like there's all that much bodywork damage to that car. The irony of some of these cautions, Blake, has been they seem to be involving some cars that have elected to stop under yellow flags. Now, again, Trent Barnes had to come down because he had a slow leak in the right rear that was approved by officials. Katie Hedinger spun after she was involved, or I should say after she came down the pit lane to try to make adjustments on her car as well. The back of the pack does not appear to be a safe place at all, being that we're starting to get to that point in this run where the handle is starting to go away on several cars, especially those who aren't running all that well.
Well, and I think the last couple of laps or so, we really started to see, I think what we were talking about earlier tonight, that this was going to be a good litmus test for what we'll see in the second half of the race, and a lot of drivers who were starting to kind of realize, hey, around halfway through this stint, is that when I need to start pushing? We definitely saw more drivers, especially up towards the top 5 or the top 6 or so, that started to venture up to the middle. Queen was able to get up to 4th. Also, how about Cody Kelly, that can kind of march through the field early but has maintained his position there. Starting to see more drivers, I'm sure, testing the limits here, and I would imagine that would continue. When the fact you get under yellow, you get to cool down these tires. It always seems to make race car drivers a little more antsy to get after it, doesn't it?
Yeah, Carter Langley was one of them that we certainly saw dusting off the top groove. The racetrack is cleared from all that has been involved in terms of the on-track incidents. A couple of cars have decided to come down here. The 99, who we got an update from Jacqueline earlier, and Stacy Puryear taking another chance to perhaps do some work on that car. He's going to leave the pit area. And the 30 of Paul Owens, who was recently announced as a development driver for that of Rhett Jones Racing in 2024. The plan is to hopefully run some ARCA Menard Series East races, along with maybe some events on the west side or the national side as well. But this is his South Carolina 400 debut. He has had some starts already in full-bodied stock cars. The driver out of Quakertown, Pennsylvania, is going to be able to rejoin this field to try to garner up all the experience that he can. At the time of the yellow, he was in fact one lap down, and he'll be hoping to perhaps be able to utilize the free pass to get back on the lead lap.
And only a couple of cars that are a lap down. That's kind of been the one benefit of some of the yellows that we've had, that the Stuart Ricks or the Paul Owens that did indeed go a lap down. I believe it's the 70 of Stuart Ricks that will be put back on the lead lap. So we still have a lot of cars here, Eric, that are in the running for this thing and still on the lead lap as things run right now. It's just 2 drivers that are out of this race, unfortunately, both with mechanical issues of their own, and Boo Boo Dalton and Mark Wirtz, that will make our 40th and 41st position. The field will catch up, and once again, Josh Berry, as he has all night long, has elected to take the bottom side. And again, as we mentioned earlier on in the program, only the front row driver, who is the leader, can choose which lane to run in. The rest of the field, there is no choose cone here in the South Carolina 400. Odd cars on the inside, even cars on the outside.
We're going to add one more to the attrition list of this race so far. Truett Miranda, who was involved in the caution that just brought out the most recent slowdown of this race with 70 laps in the book. Initial word from the officials up here in the tower with us was that he was in fact retired, but he's going to get a chance to rejoin this race. So Miranda will come back out. 70 laps complete. We're back underway.
And Miranda going to be held at the tail end of pit road, had the stop sign just as the field was working its way up to full song in 1 and 2. We've seen the teammates get side by side a couple of times already and running mere inches off each other. A little contact made as they work off of turn 4. Matt Cox looking for the second position.
Whenever you come to the Florence Motor Speedway, you know that these 2 cars, 95 and 51, out of the McCumbee Elliott Racing stable, are going to be fast. 2023, no exception. Cox, the track champion this season, getting yet another title in 2023 at this racetrack. Trying to get the one race that is, trouble front straightaway. Big contact there as Truett Miranda spins across Stacy Puryear's bow, and there's heavy contact. At first glance, Truett Miranda, check that is Travis Truett who went around there in the T2 car. My mistake there, but Stacy Puryear, both of those cars badly damaged in the front end.
A tough situation there as Puryear off of turn 4 has all the makings of a car that got squeezed in the fence off of turn 4. See the rest of the field having to pace on by, and certainly 2 nights that I think are going to be put to an early end for both Truett and the 99 of Stacy Puryear. Take a look at it one more time as these cars sit nestled towards turn 1. You can take a look at the back end. Oh, that's a little bit of contact as Travis Truett gets run into the back of here. That's the 70 with Stuart Ricks that made a little bit of contact with Travis Truett. And unfortunately, Stacy Puryear is just an innocent bystander as he rolls down the front straightaway. Nowhere that he could go. But it was indeed the contact with Ricks from behind that sent Truett out of shape.
Truett, who has, we heard Skylar Whitfield mention the driver introduction. This may be one of his last races in terms of running that T2 car. Unfortunately, this is a similar ending to that of how his son wrapped up the Bandolero race last night. Was involved in a crash, not really of his own doing. We see Travis now climbing out of the car and is okay after what was a very, very hard hit as he spun in front of traffic. And the contact with Puryear was made right pretty much at the start-finish line.
Tough for Truett, a longtime competitor here at Florence Motor Speedway, and you can see the frustration, the disappointment here as, you know, from any of these drivers, Eric, this is kind of the season-ending race. This is their last venture in a late model stock here in 2023, and I think, you know, looking at the face of going into the off season with a little bit of work to do and not a chance at redemption for any of these drivers, it's got to be sobering and pretty frustrating.
The irony for the number 99 of Stacy Puryear was he returned to Cars Tour competition at South Boston and also was swept up in a crash there, finishing 28th. Puryear has been starting to dabble more into getting back behind the wheel of a race car, especially in events of this caliber. And it's been a stretch of bad luck for that of Puryear, who we saw they were thrashing on this car a couple of times. And unfortunately for that of Travis Truett, it's going to be the walk back to the pit area while they hook his car up onto the wrecker. And he wraps up his 2023 South Carolina 400 with just 71 laps being completed. While Truett takes the opportunity to walk back to his pit area, the field is stopped in turns 3 and 4. Cleanup continues on the main straightaway. 71 laps in the books. Josh Berry, the leader. We'll be back with more from Florence in just a moment. Cleanup continuing on the end of the front stretch as we are under caution in the South Carolina 400. A bit of attention being paid to our icebreaker winner, Doug Barnes. Let's go down to Jacqueline for an update.
Doug Barnes have been running extremely well tonight, but coming into the pits, the team was all hands on deck, making a bit of a track bar adjustment. However, the red flag is now out, so the team has stopped working on the car until they get that yellow flag back on track and they can get back to making the quick adjustments on that 88. Stacy Purier, who was involved in the incident that brought out this caution, has retired for the evening and out of his 99 car, as a few others have made their way down to pit road to make a few more adjustments before we get to that lap 125 break.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Doug Barnes was all about the red chrome wheels. And I got to say, Doug is one of the best personalities you'll ever find in the pit area, and he's also really good on the digital marketing side. I guarantee you he uses the hashtag Ferrari tonight, and he's going to get a lot more eyeballs on him than he ever expected, for good reason with all that's going on the other side of the country in terms of the motorsports world. I think that's the best-looking Ferrari, though, that we've got in motorsports, without a doubt. In all seriousness, even though he's having some issues, also we saw the same for his brother, who was involved in a caution a couple of yellows ago. We could still expect them to be contenders when all is said and done in this race.
Well, again, it's just brought a strange pause here, as you can see a lot of the work going on in turns 1 and 2. You saw the fact that, and you know, shout out to this track crew who was busy last night, got everything done in prompt fashion, and the fact that, I mean, we even have a jet dryer out here at Florence Motor Speedway. It's been upgraded, and they've been able to do a lot of work in very quick times. As you can see, that's the number 29, that also is one of those cars that was parked down in the pit of Casey Wyatt, that is surveying everything that they can and, you know, doing everything that racers can do. Again, Eric, these are race teams, and you can see them rolling out a tire and perhaps trying to diagnose exactly what they need to do to replace it, and anticipating that with some of the crew that's starting to exit turns 1 and 2, that work may be done, and they're going to be ready as soon as possible to try and fix whatever's ailing that race car. If anything, this kind of gives them a little bit of time to make a game plan for exactly what they want to do, how they're feeling, have a little bit of a conversation about the adjustments and changes that they want to make to their cars.
Well, while the field continues to wait for the yellow flag to be displayed to make that happen, let's get an update on Casey Wyatt's car, who remains in the pit lane.
Hey guys, I think this is the first time I've ever seen this happen before, but the track officials are diagnosing a flat tire while it's actually on the car, since we are under red flag conditions. So the officials were actually underneath the car with their flashlights looking for a hole on the right rear of this number 29 of Casey Wyatt, so that the team can get an approved flat and they can put on that right rear once we get back to the yellow. There's a minimal damage on the nose of this 29 as well, although they have the hood off, just looking at everything as he was involved in the caution earlier today.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And Casey Wyatt, who had a top 15 run at the Hampton Heat, has not run the South Carolina 400 at Florence before, but he did run 2 prior races at Myrtle Beach, finished top 10 there in 2011. And once he is approved to put on that, I don't necessarily want to call it a new tire, but approved tire to circumvent the flat in which they're dealing with there on the right rear, we'll hopefully be able to rejoin the race if the opportunity presents itself. We are back under caution flag conditions, so Doug Barnes and company will rejoin the race, and the field will go back into the control of Josh Berry and the Florence Motor Speedway pace truck.
Yellow flag lifted so they can go to work on those machines. Barnes seemed to pull away, or at least had gotten all the work done necessary. As soon as the yellow flag was lifted, he was able to go down to the tail end of the pit lane and just waiting on the stop sign to say go before he's allowed back out onto the racetrack. But boy, has the complexion of this race, Eric, completely changed from what we saw a little bit earlier. Procedural, everybody kind of minding their P's and Q's, running down to the bottom. We saw a couple of drivers who were willing to go up high and kind of test the waters a little bit early in the race. But for the most part, everybody's been taking care of each other, been taking care of their equipment. And here in the last 8 laps or so, it's all kind of gone haywire. It's all gone out the window.
And we've had the opportunity to see several late model stock car races at this racetrack before. And even with, I think you can call the countless races that we've had a chance to witness here and see it kind of unfold under differing circumstances, some at daytime, some at nighttime. I can't handicap the field yet here. I don't know who's really all that strong. Obviously, Josh Berry has led the most laps in this race so far, but we have not really seen who's pressing, who's being aggressive. The one car that has started to organically climb his way up the running order is our defending race winner here in Brendan Butterby and Queen. And you actually alluded to this in fascinating capacity in terms of his ability to be able to time what it takes to save at the beginning of a run and then be able to maximize pace at the end of a run. One of my favorite stories, Blake, and I've told this several times before, Bobby Labonte, 2000 NASCAR Cup Series champion, ran one of his first Tour-Type modified races at this racetrack. And he was chasing down a young gun in that of Caleb Petty late in the going, and he came up just a little bit short. And Bobby was very honest in the fact that I don't really know what it takes in order to be very fast and at my best at the very end and for how long I've got. And that's someone who had decades of experiences, multiple NASCAR championships under his belt, and is a NASCAR Hall of Famer, let alone to some of these young drivers, some of these newcomers, late model stock cars, or even some of them who have been doing it for a very long time. Perfecting that art and being able to master what it takes in order to get the most out of your car throughout the duration of a run, it's hard. And that's why we come out and watch it.
And it's hard, and it's unique to this racetrack alone. Again, there's plenty of drivers. I'll bring up one example of a young man named Josh Dickens, who's been acclimated to late model stock cars over the course of this past year, has won one race here before. And, you know, that's something that these drivers really take a liking to this racetrack, but to know what they need is something entirely different. I think Landon Huffman's a great example. When I was talking with him a little bit earlier today, that he was quite honest with me. He said, you know what, this is not my favorite racetrack. It is not necessarily that I think it's a bad track. I just don't know what I need here. I haven't driven a car that I feel comfortable with yet to be able to go out and maneuver and make the moves that I want. I don't know what I need here. And I think that's the difference, that you have a lot of experience up here at the front of the field, and I think that kind of speaks for itself, that everybody else may not be as experienced at this racetrack and hasn't driven a car here that has really hooked up. They may not know exactly what they don't know.
Even for those who have been doing this for many, many years, it's still a bit of a learning experience. 71 laps complete. Again, the 10-minute break is going to come at lap 125. Josh Berry, since early in this race, has held steady at the front of the field. Sam Yarbrough, Matt Cox, Brendan Butterby and Queen, your front four, back underway in the South Carolina 400. Let's see if we can keep it rolling here for several laps as everybody is starting to display some of the ill-handling characteristics of their cars as we get later in this run, with Yarbrough trying to make the top side work on Berry for the lead.
Each of the last couple of restarts, Yarbrough has been really strong through 1 and 2, but Josh Berry on the bottom of 1 and 2, saw it in the street stock race a little bit earlier, is just able to make so much time up on the bottom. And I love even that speed shot right there. You can see the amount of dust that kicks up just from these cars sitting and not pacing around that long. As soon as they get back up to full song, that's why this track is in the condition that it is. The sands, South Carolina beaches are not too far away. It does a number on wearing out this track. There was one car that in the back of the field as they went on by, somebody was displayed the black flag, and we'll see if there's a reaction from somebody in the field. Definitely Spence was waving the black flag to somebody, and we'll see if he can point him out this time.
So field comes back by the start-finish line. We'll try to get a positive ID on that car. All the while, quick update on that of Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jack LaDrake has been monitoring some of the radio communication there. No cause for concern just yet. He is running in the 19th position right now, and the word is he is just riding. So the car's a little bit tight in the center of the corner.
Oh, Gentry's got damage.
But he is just riding right now, is out of the 3 car.
Gentry, who had been running inside the top 15 for a good portion of this race, see some damage on the left front, scraping a little bit, falling a little bit further back as he's side by side with Earnhardt Jr., who had kind of settled in the 24th position, has found about 5 or so spots to be able to make up. And actually the black flag is going to be issued to the number 70 car of Stuart Ricks, who was involved in that latest incident. And the word from the officials is that he did not answer or start at the rear end like he was supposed to for this restart.
All the while, Ricks eventually is going to stop being scored if he stays on the racetrack. As we got trouble, back straightaway, car off the pace. That's Brandon Pierce, who is slow, and the caution flag is going to fly. Not sure if there was another car that may have dipped the wheel off, but Pierce was definitely one of the first cars that we saw off the pace on the back straightaway.
And he has got a significant amount of damage on the left rear. So he comes down the front straightaway here. Oh, yeah, you can see the left rear quarter panel is just sheared off of that race car. And has the lookings of somebody that just probably drove up in the left rear and jumped up on the back of that race car. And just hate that Brandon is such a great character in late model stock car racing, but that is just the way that this year has gone for him. And fortunately for him, bringing out the caution.
Get a quick look there at the 70 car that was being given the black flag. The last crash that we saw that involved Travis Truitt and Stacy Puryear, the 70 was deemed responsible for that contact. And when the race got back going, he stayed on the racetrack. But Blake, by the way in which that car is rolling, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a part of a piece of the action that took place off turn 2. Stuart Ricks' night appears to be over in that 70 car.
And also Pierce pulling down to his hauler that's kind of parked a little bit past the pit exit here in turn 1. The Lee Pulliam Performance team going to go to work on that race car. As you can see that, at least for the 70 of Ricks, he's climbed out of his race car. It looks and appears as if his night may be done. So Ricks steps out of his race car. Brandon Pierce pulls to the end of pit lane. And the rest of the field continues to pace around at a race that initially had a rapid pace to it, but has slowed to a crawl with a number of cautions that have involved a number of competitors. And there you can see the work going on with Brandon Pierce and his Lee Pulliam Performance team.
Pierce and company are going to start to go to work on that car. We also want to update that the 32 of Zach Miracle was involved in the crash off of turn number 2 as well. Needed the assistance of a push truck in order to get his car refired. You see there the badly damaged bodywork on the car of Oak Ridge, North Carolina's Brandon Pierce. There's a lot of work going on that machine. Let's get an update from Jacqueline.
Not only a lot of cosmetic damage on this number 2 of Brandon Pierce. As you can see that they're working on the driver's side door, all hands on deck from the LPP team. But additionally, Lee Pulliam is now at the right front tire looking at the brakes. There's quite a bit of damage. White walls on these outside tires, and as they put the hood down, it looks like they're going to be able to send him back out, but not sure how long he'll be able to last with extreme damage to that right front brake caliper.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And, you know, Brandon just wrapped up what was his 7th official season with at least one start in the Cars Tour. Finished 3rd in this race back in 2021. And he's been very open. Him and his buddy Dylan Wilson both host a podcast together. And they do an amazing job. Big Time Auto Racing, the perfect name for it. And they recap their race weekends and their year. And unfortunately, as it appears as though they may be heading back to the hauler. So Pierce's night is going to be over, but he's been very public about the level of disappointment. You would think finishing in the championship point standings, top 10 in points, 10th, against the caliber of field in which he's raced against all year long, that would be something to be proud of. But to his veteran standards and knowing his capability and ability inside of a race car, to him it was a little bit of a letdown. And this race may have been an opportunity for him to try to gather things back up and regroup for 24. And it seems like his night is going to end here 77 laps in.
And again, that's just been the 2023 that he has unfortunately had very strong showings in each of the appearances that he's made here. As long as he could just get it to the end, we know he's a great driver that can save a lot of tire. But back up front, it is still the same as we have seen since the drop of the green flag. Josh Berry, Sam Yarborough, Matt Cox. Although it is Butterbean that has found his way up into the top 4 as well. Start of the outside of the second row. And a couple of fast cars that are behind him in Kelly and in Cade Brown. And, you know, I don't think enough credit is really given here to Cade Brown and how strong he has been in everywhere that he has showed up these last couple of weeks or so. Obviously won the track championship at Hickory Motor Speedway, was a track championship or track champion here in 2022. And I got to tell you what, he's somebody, he has the experience, he has fast race cars, and wouldn't be shocked if he's up front and can maybe make up a row or two before we settle this thing out and take our break at lap 125.
Lap away from the restart. Update from Jacqueline to put an exclamation point on the Tuesday night. He is, in fact, out. It was a broken hub that forced him to retire from this race here tonight. As Blake mentioned, Josh Berry, Sam Yarbrough, front row. They've been in the front row all night long. Reciprocated to start the race with Yarbrough on the pole. Now he's going to restart outside of Josh Berry. Matt Cox, Brendan Butterbean Queen in row 2. And row 3 takes you back to that of the aforementioned number 16 of Casey Kelly and the 23 of Cade Brown. 77 laps complete. Break coming at 125. Restart is underway, and Berry is making the bottom side work for him.
You can see just how well that car launches off the bottom of turn 2. We've seen the teammates be side by side on a couple of these ensuing restarts. Berry just making it look easy right now, as if he's on cruise control. Able to pull away. Butterbean may look to make it 3 wide. It's Cox sliding off the corner. Got a little bit of a nudge from the 03, but he collects it, saves it. That allows Cade Brown to have a chance. Oh, we have a big crash on the back straightaway. Hard contact. One car up and into the air. The 16 of Adam McCumbee, one of the cars that are involved, and it is a parking lot at the bottom of turn 3.
There's a car just to the right of your picture, behind where those spectators are standing. That appears to be a car that is on its roof. That's Adam McCumbee to the outside there. There were several cars involved. Crews arriving on the scene, and unfortunately, our vantage point is not far off from where our cameras are located here on the front straightaway, so we do not yet have a positive identification on that car. At the point in which we looked up and saw that happen, it appeared as though that most of the carnage had already taken place. You see the track crew is on the scene immediately, and cleanup will commence over there in turn number 3 after a multi-car crash has slowed this field yet again. We'll be right back, and we will update you on the situation on the back straightaway in just a few moments. Welcome back to the Florence Motor Speedway in Timmonsville, South Carolina for the 2023 running of the South Carolina 400. And we are under the red flag yet again after a multi-car crash on the back straightaway that sent one car up and over, and we could positively identify that car as the number 20 of Joshua Dickens out of Miami, Florida. And you're getting a look there at what are some of the remnants of that car. The Van Dyke Racing Performance number 20 team made a transition to this organization in the midway portion of the season and was having a quiet night before getting swept up in this accident on the backstretch as to where that car got lifted up and over. The good news is that Josh did climb out of the car and is in fact okay. Of course, the bad news is they are just now having to tie up a couple of straps to that vehicle to get it righted and off the racing surface, as the Florence Motor Speedway track crew has been tested at great lengths already this weekend and here tonight. But, again, the good news is that Josh is, in fact, okay, and we will do our best to see if we can have an opportunity to catch up with him after what was, by far, one of the scariest rides that we've seen here so far this weekend.
Yes, it's going to take some time, but, you know, first off, again, great to hear that Josh Dickens climbed out of the car under his own power, and, I mean, you could just look at the amount of damage on this race car as it gets lifted up. I mean, that is just a sight that, as these race fans, race car drivers, that you do not want to see, and I'm sure many of which that are parked on the back straightaway here as they stopped for the red flag, very concerned. And I got to talk at length with Josh early this morning, and somebody that we've seen a number of times in late model stock competition. And again, he mentioned, you know, how excited he has been to continue to learn what it takes to run in these late model stock cars, and has a lot of aspirations next year to not only run this and other vehicles and in other series. And just lucky today that unfortunately doesn't have the race in and that car is completely destroyed. But again, these race car drivers, and I know with the passing of Ken Squire this week, they say that they're common people doing uncommon things, and just so glad that he's able to climb out of this race car.
Dickens, who competed in this race last year, but not in the late model stock car portion of the program. He was fifth in the limited late model race, also ran the legend car event, which is basically how he's cut his teeth to get to this point. Former Young Lions Dirt National winner, and also a winner on what is, of course, the famed summer shootout that takes place at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in the summer months. But nevertheless, a badly destroyed number 20 car for that of Josh Dickens. But the best news that we have to share is that the driver out of Miami, Florida, is okay after the big impact and tumble over on the end of the backstretch. And Blake, we touched on this a little bit yesterday after we had a car get out of the ballpark. You see the gentleman there standing in the middle of your frame in the orange? That's John Russell. He cut his teeth up at Wall Stadium Speedway, where I'm from. And as we mentioned, not only are a lot of the hardworking members of this track crew well-versed in trying to clean up the scene of an accident, John himself is a member of the first aid squad up in New Jersey. He's got a lot of medical experience behind him, and he knows how to respond to urgent situations. And oftentimes, if he is at a racetrack and something like this happens, he is the first one on the scene. And the drivers have started here at the Speedways. He's been a part of the Florence Motor Speedway family this season. He's started to become a welcoming sight for drivers who find themselves in peril. And Josh Dickens was in immediate good hands thanks to him and many of the other hardworking members of this track crew.
It is all hands on deck. I mean, you can see Steve Zacharias out there on the scene and so many others who have elected to lend a hand. You can see Steve and his wife there. She grabbed a broom. She was up here in the tower just a couple of laps ago or so. And so many of the track crew here just trying to get everything they can done. And what a terrific job they have done to try and clean up the area and get that car turned over. Again, that's a lengthy process. But again, like you said, being able to approach this car and know that Josh is okay and climbing out, that's the best news. Unfortunately, it's going to end up in a destroyed race car, but so great that Josh Dickens is able to walk away. And again, we hope that, you know, perhaps in a moment or so we can get a word with that young man.
Unfortunately, it's yet another red flag in this race. There are a couple of cars in the pit lane, and those teams are not allowed to work on their machines. Not quite sure how many of them are retiring from the race at this juncture, or how many of them want to perhaps do some work or some service on their particular race cars. But the rule book states that with the red flag being displayed, drivers do not have the opportunity or option to work on their race car. with that, the cleanup is continuing at the end of the back straightaway. Again, the good news is the driver involved, Josh Dickens, out of the car and okay after a scary crash 77 laps into the South Carolina 400. We'll be back right after this short message. The hard-working track crew certainly earning their keep here tonight at the Florence Motor Speedway. As again, we are under a red flag with 77 laps complete in this race, with the halfway break waiting on the horizon at lap 125 of the 2023 Charlie Powell Memorial South Carolina 400 here at the Florence Motor Speedway. I'm Eric Brennan alongside of Blake McCandless. Jacqueline Drake is handling things for us down trackside in a race that began in relatively calm circumstances. The first 40 or 50 laps of this event, as a matter of fact, got us up to lap 62 before we had our first caution. And since then, it has been, I wouldn't call it quite chaos, but maybe a little bit of madness. We've seen a lot of cautions, a lot of spins, a lot of tangles, a really big impact on the front stretch that took out a couple of cars, and then, of course, the big pile up at the exit of turn number 2 and down the backstretch that saw Miami, Florida native Josh Dickens go for a wild ride. Fortunately, that car has now been retrieved from the Turn 3 area, and that means we are getting closer to getting this race back underway, which has been led all but about 6 laps by that of Josh Berry.
Well, and it's kind of, in a way, it resembles a lot of what we saw early on in the South Carolina 250, I think a night ago, where we've had a lot of chaos kind of condensed in one area of the race. And like you mentioned, it's been 15 laps or so, and 62 just absolutely flew by in this race, and yet we still have a long ways to go. What an emotional win it was for Tumbleston to be able to get the job done in the street stocks, and of course AJ Sanders, and mentioned his pedigree getting it done in the mini stocks. As there you can see being towed back to their trailer that's going to be parked just in front of the tech shed here in the middle of the front straightaway, and these fans that are in the grandstands get a look at exactly what happened to that race car and what is left of it, which is not much.
From our vantage point, it seems like there's a tremendous amount of front-end damage, particularly to that of the right front of the Van Dyke Racing Performance number 20 team, which we highlighted and mentioned a little bit earlier. There you see the significant impact that he took on top. And, you know, oftentimes, we've had this conversation, in fact, earlier this year. Remember, it was at Ace Speedway in the Cars Tour event when Ryan Wilson went into the wall hard along with Chase Burrow, who kind of ramped up over his car. Even though Burrow was the one that went over, Wilson took the brunt of that impact. Unfortunately for Josh Dickens, it looks like he had a combination of both. A pretty big hit there that did a lot of damage to the front of that car, and then he climbed the wall and ended up on his lid.
A little bit of contact, and that car definitely kind of launched a little bit as it kind of hit those inside Jersey barriers and just created a rough situation. You can see the driver's side, the impact, and honestly, this side of the car, all things considered, not nearly as badly torn up in the body as what you have on the right side. As you can see a lot of crew members from many different teams trying to overlook some of the damage on this 20 car, and many of which are on Josh Dickens and his crew, to see what is left and all that happened to him.
And you see all the crew members and everyone down in the pit area trying to get a look at this vehicle. And it's for more than one reason. Obviously, your mind jumps to curiosity. We all want to see what the car looks like when it gets back. But we talked about how the drivers and teams are trying to learn as they navigate their way through this race. When you see an accident of this caliber, it's a learning opportunity to improve on particular safety enhancements. And a first look at this car.
That's been a big topic this year.
Absolutely. And getting a first look at this car and seeing where some of the impact points was, what worked, what could have been done better. Obviously, seeing Josh climb out of the car under his own power was huge for all of us here at the racetrack to show that the safety initiatives in place for these late model stock cars did their job, but there is always going to be room for improvement. And I think that is something that's also going to be taken away from this scene when this car eventually makes its way back into the possession of the race team. Hats off to our camera crew for running down to the far side of the racetrack to get us the pictures as they were trying to get that car back on all fours and then following it along essentially back to the pit area before it could get passed off to the rightful team owners.
That car will continue to get towed away, and it looks as if all the cleanup is just about wrapped up in turn 3 as the crew starting to enter their trucks. And again, an extensive amount of work. You can imagine the amount of fluids that leaked out of that race car, and you saw an entire team's worth of folks over there trying to make sure that that end of the racetrack is okay and in racing condition. We can see what we believe was kind of the initiation of that contact there, or at least one of the cars we believe that was involved, in Tristan McKee that sits on pit lane in the number 7. You can see more crew members spectating and seeing exactly what is left of the number 20 of Josh Dickens.
Well-known motorsports reporter Matt Weaver, who's here on the track property, has been monitoring some of the radio communication between that of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and his team, and evidently Jr. may have gotten a piece of that at some point in that wreck. The quote from Dale on the radio, "I couldn't have done anything different." So we'll have to get a look at that 3 car when they loop back around here to see if there is any cosmetic or bodywork damage on that car.
And finally, again, hats off to the track crew here as cars are starting to fire up on the back straightaway, and the red flag has been lifted, and we are back under the caution flag yet again at Florence Motor Speedway tonight as we kind of get to take a breath and reset things.
Well, as you see the field start to circulate here under the caution flag, let's take an opportunity to hear from another driver who fell by the wayside by virtue of attrition in this race. Brandon Pierce is with Jacqueline.
Brandon, retiring early for this evening. Walk me through what happened, though, in those closing laps.
Yeah, about 25, 30 laps before we ended up ultimately falling out. Junior got us in the fence here on the front stretch. I don't think it was anything intentional, but I was definitely there, and he just kind of kept coming, and we got in the fence pretty hard and thought everything was okay. I seen him coming, and so I just kind of tried to hit the wall as straight as I could, and never really lost turn or anything. And then there, right before we went out, I come off a 4, and the right front hub broke. So I was trying to get down and get out of the way and stay tucked up against the inside wall. I was waving my hand out, and Zach, unfortunately, I think he seen me. He kind of gave me a nudge and was letting me get it gathered up and get out of his way, and whoever was behind him just kept plowing through him, and about lost my hand. So just trying to kind of let everybody know what was going on, and ultimately it sent Zach up on top of the left side of the door. So anybody who's followed the season knows that's just kind of how my years went. So it sucks. I think we had a pretty good car. It was just hard racing all through the field, guys trying to keep track position, and we were doing that. I wish we were a little further up. The car was good, and you know, I think we were going to be able to go forward. So it's unfortunate, but glad when the hub broke, I kept it out of the fence. Normally when you do that, it doesn't end too well. So just proud of all my guys, Lee Poyam and everybody, my family and everything, and all of our great sponsors. I'm ready for some time off.
Number 2, Brandon Pierce out for this race.
There may not be anybody else who is looking more forward to 2024. Perhaps the change of the year on the calendar is all that Brandon Pierce needs to finally get some good luck back on his side. And you could tell just by the way in which he was articulating what had happened there, that is a driver who puts a lot of work, a lot of effort into his racing ventures. This season has been no different. The luck just hasn't been there for him. And he said he's looking forward for some time off. He'll be able to refresh a little bit. And we'll see what Brandon Pierce has in store for 2024 as the field is back under the control of Josh Berry and the Florence Motor Speedway pace truck. And a marvelous job by the hardworking track crew here in what was a unique circumstance to be thrown into. Blake, we mentioned several times about how every time we come back here to Florence Motor Speedway, there's something new, something improved, something that is done better. When we walked in here, Steve Zacharias was hyped that we had new chairs up here in the tower. Even if it is a minuscule type of an effort that is put forth by the track, it goes a very long way. And I have to say, I've seen wrecks not as bad as that take 3 times as long at some of the racetracks in which we go to in a calendar year. That was a very fast cleanup. Hats off to all involved, and hopefully we don't put those hardworking men and women to work like that again for the rest of the night.
Yeah, and again, allows us to kind of reset what we had been watching up to this point in a race that, at least for now, has been dominated by Josh Berry up to this point. You can see the McCumbee Elliott machines, who have been close but not close enough to be able to take the race lead. We mentioned Queen in 4th. Cody Kelly has been hanging on, or excuse me, Casey Kelly in that 5th position in the 16K. Cade Brown, Cody Kelly, Caden Honeycutt, Carson Quapple, Connor Zillage, both he and his teammate Jacob Hefner have been just outside the top 10 all evening long. And, you know, with this break, Eric, with this downtime of the action, we have a 10-minute break to look forward to in just about 50 laps or so. But as a driver, how do you kind of mentally compartmentalize everything that's been going on, realize that you have a job to do, you have to go out there and do your best, and then also you have a lot of downtime to perhaps look forward to after that? Being focused, being engaged, going to be key here over the course of this long downtime that we've had, and may perhaps also look forward to.
I would say that perhaps the start, stop that we've seen, I almost think it's going to put some of the teams at risk of overthinking some of the changes that are going to have to come at that lap 125 break. I mean, this has been a lot of time to almost overanalyze how good your car handled or how bad your car handled in that first 62 consecutive lap run to start this race. So that may be something else which it'll be hard to kind of keep up on that. But if we see a couple of cars that have shown a lot of pace early in the going in this one drop towards the tail end of this race, that could be a reason why. Maybe perhaps overanalyzing a little bit on the lack of rhythm this race has had to start. Again, 62 green flag laps to kick us off, and then it has just been nothing but yellows and reds, and hopefully the only thing we're going to see from now to lap 125 is going to be the green silk, as we are 1 lap away from getting this race back going.
And again, curious to see who has, at least at this point in the race, before we get the opportunity to really adjust and make all those changes that I'm sure these drivers are really wanting to see, who has that car that's going to be able to go up to the front of the field. It's going to get a little bit cooler throughout the night. Obviously, the sun has been down for a while, but conditions should be relatively similar in terms of the weather. Of course, track can change a lot, and that top side, especially in 3 and 4, I think late in the going, could be something to watch out for.
Thanks to the track crew at the Florence Motor Speedway. Thanks to you fans watching from home. Cleanup concluded. We're getting set to get the race back underway. 77 laps in the books. Josh Berry and Sam Yarborough bring us down to the much-anticipated restart. And in the middle of the field, one car does not get going. That's Lainey Bice, who was off the pace. She's back up to speed, but lost several spots in the process, while Berry is clear to the lead.
And several cars had to dive out of line to miss that number 21, but yet we continue to roll on. No issues for anybody further on back in the field. Berry able to establish himself once again out front, which one of the best launches that we've seen so far of the night. Still, it is Cox on the inside of the 51, Yarborough on the outside in that battle for second. You could see a lot of what we've looked at there, a lot of battling going on so far.
A lot of racing happening throughout the midfield as Berry is still out in front. Matt Cox up to second, Yarbrough to third.
Queen up to fourth, trying to hang on. Battle further on back, just a car length behind him, side by side between a couple of cars that we've seen in Kelly, but also another car that on this restart has managed to make up a couple of positions. You can see Stephen Nassy is up there in the 16th position. Somewhat of a newcomer to late model stocks, but has taken to it very well and has enjoyed his time here. You see further on back, also Caden Honeycutt, somebody else who is slowly marching his way forward up into the 8th position.
Yarbrough has fallen back to third. Here's Brendan Butterbean Queen in fourth. Behind them, the number 16K of Casey Kelly. And they have pretty much fallen a good bit of ways. A second and a half is the gap from the top two back to this knot of cars. It sees that of Yarbrough in the 95, Butterbean in the 03, and Caden Honeycutt in that black number 10 car working the outside with the fluorescent yellow neon looking numbers, starting to move forward in this race. Now alongside of Cade Brown on the front stretch. That's going to move Honeycutt up to sixth.
And as far as practice yesterday, and again, these cars practiced during the day. Very hot racetrack, very hot conditions here in Timmonsville, South Carolina the last couple of days. But Caden Honeycutt perhaps made the longest run in practice that I saw. It was nearly 40 laps or so that he ran consecutively at second practice yesterday. It was largely doing a lot of this. Knew that the top was going to be good in 1 and 2, but he told me, look in 3 and 4, he thinks he found something. He didn't want me to give the details out, but we'll see if it pans out nevertheless about what he can do at the top end of 3 and 4. Meanwhile, back up front, huge lead for your top two that have separated themselves a couple of seconds, about 2 seconds or so from third on back. But at least for now, Matt Cox holding Josh Berry at bay for now.
We mentioned that Matt Cox, the 2023 champion in late model stocks here at this racetrack. But this is one race where he has run so well but has not had the result to back it up. Led 29 laps in this race in 2021, 31 last year before crashing off at turn 2. Cox hoping to put the perfect cherry on top on what has been a great 2023, and the battle for third is the best on the racetrack.
It was Queen who was on the top side. He's gone back down to the bottom as Yarbrough fading a little bit here late in the going in this run. Butterbean looking to try to make his way back, and again continue to talk about the fight that Kelly has had in that number 16 car. Fell back a couple of positions early, has really started to turn on the jets, and Caden Honeycutt, somewhat of a new venture coming out in RNS race car. He's run it for the last couple of weeks in some late model stock car competitions. Ran the Cars Tour finale at Caraway as well as a Rodney Cook Classic at Ace Speedway, but his venture to a new race team has not slowed him down a bit. Battle for third, left-hand side, battle for the top spot on the right side.
Getting to that point in this run here as we're going to be coming up to complete 90 laps next time by Yarbrough. Nearly got kicked off the racetrack on the exit of turn 2. I think he was trying to get behind Butterbean, and Casey Kelly filled the void.
And again, a great reaction that time. Involuntary, I'm sure, for the number 10 of Caden Honeycutt. Had a huge run, was able to lift. You can see a little bit of the damage or the donut that's on the side of that 95 as a result of that contact. He's able to keep it on the racetrack. May lose a pair of positions in doing so. Oh man, that is close on the right rear quarter panel between Kelly and Yarbrough. That was nearly a disaster. Look at Honeycutt though, around the top side, 3 wide, trying to make the very outside of the track work, and he nearly went off in 2.
He almost ran out of running room himself there on the top side of Yarbrough. And look who is starting to join this fight. That's the white 57 of Connor Zilish, winner from last night, and back-to-back Cars Tour champ Carson Quapple, we've got another caution flag. This yellow coming with 91 laps unofficially completed. It's going to slow some of the incredible battles that we've seen going on here all throughout the front runners. Blake, I believe we've got another car that may have exited stage right off of turn 2.
Yeah, it is clear off the back straightaway.
I see one car rejoining from our vantage point.
That's the 29 of Wyatt. And I think that was the lone car that went off there. You can see them getting back in their trucks. So yes, Casey Wyatt and doesn't look like he has a ton of damage on that car either. So looks like everything's A-okay. One of the ventures that we've seen off the racetrack where he's able to come back on has a little bit of damage on the left front fender from what we can see as he passes us here in the tower. Clearly a little bit of contact, obviously aiding that venture off the racetrack, but able to collect it and bring it back. And looks like the safety crew gonna have some easy work for this caution flag. And boy, was that racing getting good.
There you see the number 29 now that he's re-entered the arena from cutting the grass on the back straightaway. We documented some of Casey Wyatt's story. Virginia racer, most known for his accolades at the Langley Speedway. Was on pit road earlier in the race. We heard from Jacqueline that had to get an approval to change the right rear tire on that car after he started to have a problem. Officials had to vet that machine while under one of the red flags because they weren't allowed to work on that car. And minus a little bit of a wrinkle in the left front fender,
yep,
the car doesn't appear to be all too worse for the wear.
Sets up about a 35-lap run here to the halfway break. I think we were just starting to see some of the cars that may be players towards the end of this race and who saved and who didn't. And unfortunately there, Sam Yarborough, who's kind of been kept in lockstep so far with Josh Berry on the night, fell back a couple of positions. Honeycutt, one of the bigger movers we've seen over the last dozen or so laps. And you know, Eric, we talked about working the high side, and he was fully committed. Yarborough was running the middle. He went beyond that white line that you could see at the very top of 1 and 2. He went beyond that to try to make his move by the 95. And that takes some commitment, especially this early on in the race. That takes a lot of confidence. That means he really likes his race car.
I do, in fact, wonder if Yarborough and team are reaching for the panic button, if you will, being that we're 34 laps away from the opportunity for these drivers to bolt on that fresh set of Hoosier rubbers they have down in the pit area, and also to make what could be some crucial adjustments. And if this stretch of the race is going to play out in a similar fashion as the second half, seeing that number 95 car fade from the front at this juncture may not bode all that well for him in his efforts to try to win this race. We'll see what they are able to do in order to hopefully make that car handle a little bit better a short time from now, as the field is being told to double up this time through. And our race leader, Josh Berry, no surprise, going to elect the bottom with Matt Cox, who was essentially matching the pace in which the Kevin Harvick Incorporated number 62 was displaying. Last year's winner, Brendan Butterbean Queen, has worked his way up into the third position. Casey Kelly pretty much been in or around fourth place all night long, with Yarborough, the pole sitter, having faded to fifth.
An interesting treat that we've been accustomed to seeing these last couple of times around. And, you know, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's just a product of having as many cars out on the racetrack as we have. 41 that started, and still a majority of the field in that is still out on the racetrack right now. 37 of them still pacing around. And once this field doubles up, again, we know that with the size of this field that they double up and they give them an additional lap. They don't hit the one to go just yet, but a lot of the back half of the field kind of uses it as a way when they catch the field. It's almost like a mock restart. You're able to build some heat in the rear tires as they're able to catch up to the field. So everybody else kind of paces around. The rear of the field kind of comes up to full song. It's an interesting little show that these fans get before we get going.
Quick update on Dale Earnhardt Jr. coming to this restart, scored 12th as we get set 34 laps away from the one and only scheduled race break. Josh Berry and Matt Cox get us back underway, and look at Brendan Butterbean Queen trying to fill the hole to the bottom of Matt Cox in what is going to be a battle for second, but Cox gets a great drive off turn 2. And there is a car that is off the pace and rolled to a stop in turns 1 and 2.
Doug Barnes, and he has not been able to get firing. He is waving his hand out the window.
Look outfield, Doug waving adamantly there. After he got that car up about as wide as he possibly could. Boy, this has not been the kind of defense from the icebreaker win that Doug Barnes wanted to try to put together. Heads up effort by him to get that car up and out of the way, and he appears to be signaling to try to get a push.
communication going on with the track crew, and I think that, yeah, that you can see the hand signal right there. Doug Barnes just trying to get a push to get this car refired. And he was unable to do so and was adamantly waving at the top side of 1 and 2. And, you know, we give credit to the race officials here who throughout the course of the last 2 nights have been willing to let cars have the ability to get going back again if they do spin around, and eventually bring out the caution flag if it's an instance in which they cannot get rolling. But for Doug Barnes, who comes around here to the pit area, you have to wonder, and I think we zoom in here, it may be an issue with a flat tire. Yeah, but you can see the right rear.
Look at the way in which the body of that race car is shifted in such a big way. They are going to bring out that scuffed tire. And you can see there, that's actually the perfect example that we've had. That is not a brand new sticker tire that they had to pull out there. Again, this has to be an approved change, but they can't just bolt on a brand new tire. They want the tire that's kind of in the emergency bank, if you will, to be of similar substance as to what the tire that's on there would be at this juncture of the race, with 91 laps being turned on it. So they have had to go to the arsenal for that of Doug Barnes in order to replace that tire and get him back out there to rejoin this race. As we touched on earlier, Doug and his team do a tremendous job highlighting their efforts and ventures in terms of traveling about this portion of the country to chase short track checkered flags. He came up a couple of spots shy of winning the 2023 NASCAR Advanced Auto Parts Weekly Series National Championship. Unfortunately, that story may sound similar to what happened to him in 2022. Third in the standings this year, second last year. But even with that, having come up just shy of that honor in which he has been chasing down over the last couple of years, you would never know by how often you find this young man smiling at the racetrack, which he always calls home. Doesn't matter which track it is. If he's at a racetrack, he's home.
And again, kind of smart and heads up there. The right rear went down on that car, and being able to get a push to make sure that nothing was further damaged if he had a problem in the right rear. Heads up there under caution from Doug Barnes, who's able to rejoin the field, who has doubled up. And when they come around this time, we will get to the 1 to go signal yet again. Some changes up in the top 5 from what we've seen for a majority of the night. It has still been the KHI 62 Ford of Josh Berry who has led them. We've swapped the McCumbee Elliott machine that is going to be alongside, start on the outside of the front row in second. Queen has also made his way up into third. Caden Honeycutt, certainly been a car that the last few laps, the last few runs that we've gotten has looked awfully strong. Even Connor Zilish is just back up the road. Imagine that he would be running in about 11th or 12th or so. He's made his way up to the 8th position. And even the Junior Motorsports duo that we've been a little bit quiet about tonight in Carson Quapple and Dale Jr., they're right there inside and outside of the top 10.
34 laps before the halfway break. It is still Josh Berry and Matt Cox on the front row. We'll try to get in a bit of a rhythm here. Berry and Cox bring us back down for the start, and Berry has been perfect all night long on the restarts. This one, no exception, just about clear of Matt Cox for the leadoff 2.
That he has been, as Queen has been awfully strong on the bottom as well. I mean, look at the drive that 62 car has off. No wiggle. We've seen a ton of cars that, especially this late in the going, tires have been cooled. These tires have worn a significant amount. It's not uncommon to see so many cars here out the windows slipping and sliding all around this racetrack, but yet Josh Berry has not missed a mark this entire weekend. Practice, qualifying, race, it has been a near perfect outing so far for that of Josh Berry. As we take a look back, gaining some more spots on that outside line, you can see Honeycutt nearly ran into the back of Brendan Queen.
Top line starting to roll. Honeycutt trying to make it work for him in the 10. Sam Yarbrough stays committed to the bottom. There's last night's All-Pro Limited winner, and Connor Zilish, as Blake alluded to, out of the Carroll Speed Shop stable. Basically got to get the pick of the litter, did that of Zilish in that white 57 car. He said, I had so much success with this vehicle last night. I want this to be the one that I take with me as we got trouble. Turn 3. More cars off of the racing surface in the third corner. At least 2 cars involved, and Doug Barnes' day goes from bad to worse. He has badly damaged the front end of his car.
And a couple are sitting at the top end of the racetrack. You could see the 71, that's Katie Hettinger and Tristan McKee, that have parked at the very top end of turn 3.
It's a bit of a fire in the grass back there.
As Hettinger backs up, you could see kind of the remnants of a little bit of a fire there. Yeah, that's in the grass. That's just behind where McKee was parked.
Fortunately, just as we saw McKee pull away, track crew is over in that area. While McKee comes to the pit lane, track crew gave a quick little splash of the fire bottle to put that fire out there on the grass. And rough night for that in McKee. We talked about the All-Pro Limited race last night. McKee came home 3rd in that contest.
Came off of a win at the Fall Brawl at Hickory last weekend as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Limited late model.
It was coming off of what was a solid top 15 run that he had here in 2022 before being involved in a heavy impact of his own on the front straightaway. And that car has gotten some battle scars on it already.
So again, we just put 3 laps on the board as we have kind of had this push and pull, a stop and start. So you can see the work going on in the nose of the 88 car, who are, if he were able to get back out, would still stay on the lead lap. And it has been a busy, busy weekend for this Barnes Racing outfit. Mentioned the problems. They had to replace a radiator on Trent's car yesterday after a piece of the track came up and damaged the grill cover, went through everything. For more, let's head down to Jacqueline Drake.
Looking at the nose of this Ferrari, as Barnes likes to call it, all hands on deck by the team. This team has not given up tonight as they continue to work on this 88 throughout its challenges right now, using several different tools to try to get the front nose pulled off of the right front tire, which currently is laying up onto the tire right now, which will enable him from being able to turn this car. Other than that, the car seems pretty clean. They're mostly concerned about this and being able to reattach the hood once they get the fender laid down.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And again, that never say die attitude of that team is what keeps Doug in contention to be able to battle back. And honestly, Blake, at the rate in which we are seeing cautions and the level of attrition that we've seen already at this point, I would say if they can get that thing to roll, he's got a shot.
Well, and one other update that we've had, word from race officials, is that we may get a break at lap 100 because of the amount of cautions that we've seen. There's concern that with still over 30 laps to go until that halfway break, that fuel may be a concern for a lot of these drivers as we pace around under the caution flag. So perhaps going to cut that break a little bit shorter, at least stop at lap 100 to allow these drivers the opportunity to put fuel in the race car. And again, it's not many late model stock races that fuel is becoming a concern. I know at Tri-County, the Cars Tour race, that was definitely a topic with the amount of caution laps that those drivers ran. But we're kind of experiencing the same thing here, and you know, heads up here from the race officials to recognize that beforehand and realize that, you know, that could become an issue here. And if we could go another 30 some odd laps or so.
You see Doug Barnes catching up to the tail end of the pack. He's very lucky that he did not sustain more damage to the front end of that race car. It appears as though he got away from destroying the radiator and other components underneath what was once a hood on the front end of that car. And he will be able to continue on and do battle and, I believe, stay on the lead lap, as that incident happened when he was running in the 29th spot and on the same lap as the front runners. So Barnes remains in contention here at the point of this race.
Also worth mentioning, Tristan McKee has rejoined the field, as well as Katie Hettinger. And I would imagine that the fire's been put out. That was slowly starting to build off at turn 3, but who knows? Maybe it's not the last one. It's been that kind of night so far.
We got a shot of the moon earlier on this evening. It wasn't full, but that didn't mean the on-track product wasn't going to make us think otherwise. 94 laps complete. Again, currently, the expected halfway break will come at lap number 125. We'll keep you abreast if officials should elect to do something different, with Josh Berry and Matt Cox making up the front row. Casey Kelly, Brendan Queen, row 2. Caden Honeycutt starting to work his way towards the front of the pack. Rounds out your top 5. Berry has been superb on the restarts. We'll see if this one is of any exception as we get this race back off and running. Cox, though, staying with Josh Berry on the top side of the racetrack off turn 2.
And first time tonight that we have seen a car being able to go into turns 3 and 4 side by side with Josh Berry. Perhaps it's temperatures turning up here at Florence Motor Speedway. That time by, it was nearly Matt Cox who had the race lead. Just a couple of thousandths that Matt Cox was behind that 62 car.
Black flags coming out for Tristan McKee due to a right front fender rub as Cox tries to battle up top for the top spot. Berry with a great drive off turn 4 to be able to clear himself from the 51 to go back to sole possession of the front of this race.
It took him a couple of laps to get the job done. Tristan McKee has come down into the pit area and heating the black flag and will come down for service on his number 7 car. Berry able to stretch his lead by a couple of car lengths over Cox. It's been the 16K of Kelly that has found his way up into the 3rd position. Queen and Honeycutt now side by side for 4th, just behind this battle.
A little bit of separation starting to develop amongst the front 2. Here is Caden Honeycutt working the high side on Brendan Queen in what is shaping up to be a 2-car battle for 4th position. That's Honeycutt. He has found the top side of this racetrack. It may have taken a while, but that outside lane has come in a big way, and it appears to be a little bit stronger in turns 1 and 2 right now than what it is here in 3 and 4 as Butterbean tries to close back up, but Honeycutt will make the pass.
Zilish isn't done either. That car was so strong last night. He was so happy with the balance today. Even after they made the decision to run both he and Jacob Hefner in this race. Talked to him a little bit before he hopped back in the car in the midst of second practice, and he said, I like this race car. And he has put that to good use and shown that he can really work the bottom side of the racetrack as well as anybody right now.
As the last car comes to the line, the caution will fly. We believe this is going to be the race break. Right as the last car completed the 100th lap of this race, the yellow flag has flown, and we may end up seeing the 10-minute break about 25 laps sooner than anticipated. And I'm sure for some of these cars, drivers, and teams, perhaps most notably of that of the number 95 of Sam Yarbrough, this may be a very welcome sight for these organizations to make some changes and adjustments to get their cars going back in the right direction.
Indeed, you can see a lot of activity down in the pit area. So indeed, I believe that is going to be the case as everybody getting ready. And like you said, Eric, the one benefit of having these pauses is that it has allowed these teams, it's allowed these drivers to really dissect the runs that they've had, especially when you think about late race runs and being able to launch early with these cars. How does my car drive in that condition? And then, I mean, really, they've had about an hour and a half or so since we had that long green flag run to really think back on where we went straight. And to that point, how do you kind of react to that, and do you gauge how well your car is going to handle over a long run based off of what we had there versus what we've kind of had, which has been a start, stop, really since the halfway part of this first stage.
And there are still a lot of cars on the racetrack. 31 cars remain in the running of this race. Now, granted, we've lost about 10 of them already at this point, but to the tune of the amount of yellows we've seen so far, not the level of attrition that we would have anticipated when you compare it to the number of total caution flags. So the yellow flag is out. This one here for the race break. Josh Berry, Matt Cox, the leaders. We'll be right back after this short message.
100 laps, but walk me through what it's going to take in this final 150.
Yeah, no, I feel good. 62 car has been really strong, really all weekend. So we held on pretty well there. Obviously, we got to do it again now. It looks like I don't know what's going on with the format. I guess they're changing stuff in the middle of the race, and should be counting caution laps, but we're not. So now we're all about to run out of gas because we've had 10 cautions, and so now we're gonna line them up and race again for 150, I guess, to go, and try to hold these guys off and go to victory lane.
Looking around the pits right now, you're one of the only drivers that hasn't actually broke a sweat. How are you able to do so?
I think it's just being in such prime physical, such fine guys yelling at me, such prime physical fitness, right? I mean, that's got to be what it is. But no, I don't know. It helps when you got a really good car. It's beautiful weather here tonight. Like I said, we spent a lot of time under caution there, so that made it easier too.
Awesome. Well, Josh Berry, watch out for him in the closing 150 laps. We'll catch up with a few other of the top drivers in just a moment.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And how about Josh Berry there, being able to wear his heart on his sleeve and also to be humorous at the same time? And what Josh, of course, is alluding to here, this a little bit of an opportunity to come down in order to put those tires on and make adjustments was initially scheduled for lap 125. Obviously, due to fuel concerns, it's been moved up here a little bit. And should anything else change or evolve as the race unfolds, of course, we will be the first to pass it along to all of you. But I'll tell you, I'd be a little bit concerned if I was the rest of the field, because he was certainly in a position right there, was that of Josh Berry, to maybe show a little bit of concern about his performance or what he's able to put down. But he doesn't seem to be all that concerned at all, is that of Josh Berry. Now let's check in with a driver who is in the top 5 in contention. Haven't seen him lead yet tonight, but he led when it mattered most last year. Our defending South Carolina 400 winner is with Jacqueline.
Brennan Butterbean Queen has had a strong run so far. He's currently talking to his crew members right now as he sits in the 5th position. We'll get a word with him just to see how that Lee Pulliam performance car is doing. But speaking to him earlier today, he felt extremely confident coming here and winning again. Obviously won in 2022, and that was his first marquee late model stock race that he ever won, in especially his first win with the Lee Pulliam performance team. Just 1 minute, Butterbean. As you look towards those 150 laps, is your strategy playing how you thought it would?
Yeah, we're going to have to change it up a little bit here. I got 1 minute here to tell me, but I think we'll have a good chance here in this last 150. I didn't mean to get in a 95 there, but we'll make up for it here.
Brennan Butterbean in that 03 car. Watch out for him. We'll see what he has left in this 150.
Even when he's getting rushed to get back to work, he's got time to still catch up with us, does that of Butterbean. And I'm noticing a trend here, Blake. A lot of these front runners here, the confidence level still seems to be very high. There doesn't seem to be a lot of concern amongst the faces of the handful of drivers we've had a chance to see so far.
Well, no, and for good reason. They're up in the top 5, especially if your Queen kind of drove his way up through the middle portion of the field and has been able to find speed and be able to pass cars in a way that we have not seen from the rest of the field, although we had a lot of drivers who late in that race, or at least late in that first stint, were really able to show that they saved their tires very well and have come down here in the top 10. You think Honeycutt was somebody who was digging there towards the end and got up to the 4th position according to timing and scoring. Connor Zilish, your winner from last night, looked awfully strong. Cade Brown was hanging on. I think a couple of Junior Motorsports cars were really starting to show their stuff towards the latter half of that run. I know one thing we were looking at least looking at the scoring pile, on a couple of names that surprised us that had dropped down, with the likes of Ronnie Bassett Jr. and a couple of others.
Indeed, and we've also seen a lot of drivers have some misfortune here so far tonight. One driver who has steadily started to work his way further forward here tonight after qualifying outside of the top 20 is that of Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jacqueline Drake has an update on the 3 car.
Right before that break, we spoke to the Junior Motorsports team, who said the number 3 of Dale Jr. is struggling just a little bit with tightness. He came in during this break. They made a little bit of a shock adjustment, added fuel and tires on that 3 before sending him back out. But overall, team feeling confident.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And the initial report that Jacqueline provided us after monitoring some of the radio chatter and talking to some of the team members was They're just riding. And, you know, a lot of the conversation about one of the reasons why Dale loves driving this style of race car is because of his ability to do this, maintain and save his equipment and press when absolutely necessary. And he just organically starts to float his way to the front of the field. I know when we were here for the icebreaker, both he and Carson Kvapil did not run up to par. As an organization, they struggled here. But they were really looking forward to coming back here, especially because in the Car Store Sanction race, that was, a month after the icebreaker? Mm-hmm. Carson didn't about-face on that whole ideology that maybe they were struggling a bit. He went out and won the race. So, also, Carson's having that great night, as you alluded to there, Blake, as well. And Dale, too, starting to make some noise.
Well, and again, that was a condition that they fought a lot yesterday, and kind of both of the junior motorsports cars was being a little bit tight, and something that, again, I think with this break and the fact you have the ability to adjust is something that they're not only going to do, but, you know, that's the other thing, Eric. It's not just any one individual car that is going to improve as a result of this break. Everybody's had the opportunity to assess how their race was going and to make the necessary adjustments. We didn't see too much concern up at the front of the field, but nevertheless, they're race car drivers. They know that their car can in some way be better than what it is right now, and that's obviously been the focus as we start to see some clearing out. The drivers starting to strap in to their vehicles, get the helmet on, get the Hans on, earpieces, everything that they need to go out and compete for the rest of this race.
And to add on to the thought about some of the adjustments that could have been made, they've gotten a really good set of data as far as what direction this race could go in its final scheduled 150 laps. And that includes, of course, the initial long green flag run that we had in a length of 62 laps. And then we had a bunch of short runs sprinkled in with a couple of red flags due to just how this race began to unfold. And we have seen a bit of attrition start to take over. We lost Mark Wirtz at the beginning of this race due to a mechanical problem. Boo Boo Dalton retired on lap number 49. Stacy Puryear, Travis Truitt involved in a hard crash on the front straightaway, both okay. Stuart Ricks retired for the race. Zach Miracle was involved in a couple of incidents tonight. We heard from Brandon Pierce, who broke a hub. He's going to retire from this race tonight as well in 35th spot. And then the big crash on the back straightaway that saw Adam McCumbee and Josh Dickens get involved in an incident which put Dickens upside down. They are out of the event as well. That happened on lap 77. And most recently, we saw Tristan McKee come down to try to repair a fender rub, but I believe that car is also going to be retired. That leaves us with 31 competitors still running at the lap 100 mark and still on the lead lap.
And as far as the discussion that I just had with race officials in terms of how the rest of this race was going to play out, we will still finish all 250 laps of this race. Now, there is going to be some flexibility here in terms of the fact that depending on how the rest of this race plays out, I mean, we're at lap 100 and we had some concerns about fuel. We're supposed to go 150 on this run to the end. So some evaluations will be done depending on how the next 20, 30, 40, 50 some odd laps play out and whether they need another break to come down and refuel some of these cars. But Eric, I think the one thing that comes out of this is we came into this weekend with an established, and even we talked about it, the format for this race was 125, 125 laps. So you get an exact test in that first part of the race about what you're able to experience in the second half. For these drivers now, a challenge they were not expecting. They get to come down and make adjustments on their race cars, but now that distance has expanded. They have an additional 25 laps that they're going to have to save their tires, save their fuel, all of those things. And what a different challenge that's going to be for these drivers who were informed of that decision. And I think accordingly so, we'll see how this next run starts, because 25 additional laps that you're going to have to save Hoosiers, not going to be easy at Florence Motor Speedway.
As the field rolls off from what is the scheduled race break, where everyone got to bolt on their fresh Hoosier tires for this final run to the finish, as Blake mentioned, 150 laps to go. Josh Berry has been out in front essentially since the sixth lap of this race. Matt Cox has raced his way up in a second, and on the last few restarts, those two have been pretty much in lockstep formation in terms of battling for that top spot. Casey Kelly has had a strong run tonight so far. He runs third. Caden Honeycutt has raced his way up to fourth, and we got a moment to catch up, albeit briefly, with that of Brendan Butterbean Queen, who rounds out the top five. We've had several cautions. We've had a handful of red flags already, and as Blake has alluded to, there is some concern about the final run to this race in terms of fuel. And Josh Berry, I do think this is, quite honest to say, Josh Berry was pretty open and honest about the fact that their game plan and strategy could take a little bit of a hit here based on how the remainder of this race should unfold.
Well, changing that and hearing, whether it was going to go to 125 or even complete the full distance here. But, yeah, that is a decision from race officials, is that this, the South Carolina 400, makes up 250 laps with the additional features that we had here tonight, and that's what's going to round out here to make up that total. So, Barry, the rest of this field, something that race car drivers are pretty adept at doing. These race teams having to adjust on the fly, but also I think providing these race fans an incredible, unique challenge. As we'll see this field finally double up here with 2 to go.
One of the things we've seen in the couple of red flags that we've had and some of the stoppages that we've had as well is that it could oftentimes be a little bit difficult to get these cars back under power. One of the drivers in which we were keeping our eye on, back-to-back and defending Cars Tour champion in that of Carson Kvapil, who needed a little bit of a bump start to get back going. He is back under power and assumes his position in what will be on the outside of row number 4. Lap and a half away from the restart. And again, everybody pretty much has gotten an opportunity to come down the pit lane and hit the reset button and see how the next portion of this race is going to unfold. After Josh Berry has evidently been the dominant car, track champion Matt Cox is going to restart up alongside, and we are starting to see the comer and goer effect that we anticipated in this race play out to fruition. We're a lap away from getting back under green.
And yet we still have so many cars that are out on the racetrack. Of course, we have the likes of Tristan McKee, 5 laps down, scored right now. Dickens, McCumbee, Pierce, Miracle, Ricks, Truitt, Purrier, Dalton, and Wirtz. But fortunately, not going to see the checkered flag in this one, Eric. But 31 cars still on the lead lap and still have a shot to win the South Carolina 400 tonight.
We're not quite halfway in this race just yet. 100 laps in the books, 150 still to go. Josh Berry has been by far the superior competitor up to this point. Let's see what this portion of the race has in store. As we've seen throughout pretty much most of this race, Josh Berry is good on the button, and he is clear to the race lead as Caden Honeycutt is trying to press his way up into a podium spot. Outside in the black number 10 car is that of Honeycutt.
And much more similar to what we saw at the opening portion of this race. Everybody started to get in single file down on the bottom, and again, 25 additional laps than what they were planning to do on this set of tires, and I think you can see being able to take advantage of it as he's hanging out in the middle lane right now is that number 10 of Caden Honeycutt. The balance for that car as he has raced his way up towards the front of the field. Does he sit behind the veteran and Josh Berry, or does he elect to try and take the race lead himself?
Honeycutt has decided he wants to go and has a peek down to the bottom of Josh Berry for the top spot and thinks better of it as they get to turn 3.
Smart there for Honeycutt. I think he does want the top spot, but wasn't going to force the issue here with still just under 150 laps to go. We'll see if he feels the same, if he's still going to go down on the bottom, and indeed he does. Further back in the field, Sam Yarborough has continued his fall through the field as he's now lost a spot to Carson Kvapil. Dale Earnhardt Jr. trying to perhaps make a spot up. That would be for the 7th position for Dale Jr.
Jr. continuing to climb his way to the front of the field ahead of Cade Brown, just behind the pole sitter in Yarborough. Battle for the lead, right side of your frame. Battle for what is in fact the 8th position. Make that 7th with Yarborough as now Cade Brown jumps up to the outside in the 23 to try to get not only Junior, but maybe Yarborough as well, as we got a pass for the lead.
Yeah, and Barry not going to waste any time. He's going to say, see you later for Caden Honeycutt. I'm sure that's what he's thinking in that 62 car. But new race leader for the first time here in 106 laps. A change up front for somebody who has won here at this racetrack. Won his first Cars Tour race here at Florence Motor Speedway in Caden Honeycutt. And already on the back straightaway, you could see the difference in how he was able to get back to the throttle. And we'll see if the pace slows down, or will Honeycutt elect to build up on the race lead he's built so far. And again, lap times that we were seeing just before the end of that run in the 18-second bracket, Honeycutt is still running a 19.4, so backing off, but yet still has plenty of pace. Left-hand side of your screen, though, a lot going on around that number 3 car who's lost a couple of positions. He lost one to Hefner, Laney Bice, and now Cody Kelly on the top side of that number 13 trying to make his way on by as well.
Business appears to be picking up, especially here in the midfield. Dale Jr. scored 10th last time through. That's Stephen Nasse in another late model stock car appearance for him in that number 51 car in the tire tracks of Dale Earnhardt Jr. down the front straightaway. 1 week ago, Nasse scored what he would call an emotional victory at his home track of New Smyrna Speedway, the Florida Governor's Cup, which he tried to win about 10 times. And look at the front of the pack, accordion together with Honeycutt trying to protect both lanes.
They were 3 wide for a lap there amongst many good friends in Zilish and Carson Quapple. Cade Brown was a part of that as well. And Honeycutt backed up to the rest of the field. Now Cade Brown looks for a move on the top side. The door is shut by Honeycutt. As now Honeycutt electing to save his tires. Cade Brown going to try to go to the front of the field. New race leader at lap 110 is that number 23.
Brown's going to try to come down in front of the front nose of that of Honeycutt to put himself not only in the lead, but on the bottom of the racetrack. Matt Cox follows suit. Josh Berry kind of pinned behind Honeycutt right now as Casey Kelly starts to rip the top. And Laney Bice in the 21 is also starting to come up on the high side.
Couple of AK Performance teammates starting to roll that top side right now for the 3rd position, and what is seemingly looks like a game of leapfrog the last couple of laps that we've paced around here at Florence Motor Speedway. Still Cade Brown, your race leader. Cox behind by about 2 car lengths or so. And I think that's the point that Barry made. It's, yes, once you make that commitment that you don't have the race lead, he's going to continue to save, but you run into more risk continuing to fall back through this field. Kelly hard into turn 3, looking to take that 3rd spot from Honeycutt.
We talked several times about how the 51 of Matt Cox is the track champion here this season in 2023 at Florence. The driver that he bested for that title is the number 21 of Laney Bice. Most recently named the 2023 Wendell Scott Trailblazer Award winner for 2023. And she is following an AK Performance teammate in Casey Kelly up towards the front of the field. 3 wide and bouncing off the side of her teammate was Bice there on the outside.
Bice moved up the racetrack, as you mentioned, by the teammate, backs out of it. It continues to try and make her way on through up towards the top 5 of this race. Barry has fallen outside of it, and now somebody who was a protege of Josh Berry and has taken so much mentorship from him is just on the back bumper. That is the number 8 of Carson Quapple that is just on the edge of your frame as they come into picture. And so much collaboration, and Josh Berry has compared that driver that is in his rearview mirror a lot to himself, and so much has been made about what Carson has been able to do for Junior Motorsports, and he sees somebody who has been instrumental in making him a better late model stock car driver just in front of him.
Speaking of that of Josh Berry, he has fallen back into the 6th position as things run. Evidently, he is perhaps trying to conserve what is the best portion of his race car for the latter portion of this run. Leaders on the right side of your screen, that is Cade Brown, former track champion here, track champion at Hickory Motor Speedway, and fresh off of a fall brawl win 1 week ago. Ahead of Casey Kelly, one of the hometown favorites, Matt Cox 3rd, Honeycutt 4th, Laney Bice your top 5.
So despite the fact that everything has cooled down, look back at Brendan Queen, Eric. He's in 19th. He was up towards the top 5 at the start of that run, and this is very reminiscent of what we saw him employ in the icebreaker a little earlier on this year. He was going so slow, we thought something was broken on his 03 car when he was running the icebreaker earlier this year. He comes back and finishes in the 3rd position. So Queen, now that we're 20 laps into this run, looking to try and save his tires, as there's a lot going on around him. Barnhill, Langley, now Queen, 3 wide with Hettinger trying to make a way up the middle to get inside the top 20.
Queen has decided this is the pace he wants to run, and everybody, just about everybody, is going by him. 1 groove up, 2 grooves up. Barnhill and Hettinger have been able to get through, and now Hettinger will continue to try to press further forward.
Meanwhile, the battle heating up on the right-hand side of your screen for the race lead. Cody Kelly has caught the back end of Cade Brown and looking into turn 3. Almost looked to take a peek down to the inside of Cade Brown. You see how low, again, one great example of how much these drivers are saving is look how low they're exiting off of turn 4. They're giving the wall plenty of space up there, and when you're going down the straightaway and you're barely in the throttle, it's very easy to do. You know, was talking to Casey a little bit earlier today. A lot is made about the top side here at Florence Motor Speedway, whether you can run the middle. Casey said, I hope that the bottom comes in tonight at Florence Motor Speedway, doing exactly what you just saw him do right there. Wrap the bottom of 1 and 2, and the exact same thing in 3 and 4. He thinks this race favors him when the top side is not quite as strong, and certainly hoping that that is going to be the case tonight for that number 16 K team, who has been strong and very fast all night long. Could very well find himself in South Carolina 400 victory lane tonight.
As we continue to watch the leaders, Blake, I am not sure about the 03 of Brendan Queen. I can't tell if he is saving to the max capacity, but boy, even the motor sounds different because he is just feathering the throttle down the straightaways here. But he has plummeted down the running order even further. He's back in 27th. He might wait until the leader gets right up to that rear bumper to start pressing forward.
And at least a call for the radio that, yes, this is planned. This is not anything that is befalling that 03 car. So mark that 2 races here, Eric, at Florence Motor Speedway, where we think something may be amiss on that 03 car. But the pace that he is back down to, and Ronnie Bassett Jr. is following him. And that's kind of another driver that, again, we talked about how well he has run at these abrasive racetracks this year. Clearly learned something in that first run and trying to gear up better for this second one. Meanwhile, back up front, still about a car length separating Cade Brown, Kelly, Cox just behind him. And now one other driver trying to perhaps squeeze on the top side. It's the other Kelly twin.
It's going to be Cody Kelly in the 13 on the outside, as things start to tighten up here in what is a battle that is shaping up all behind the race leader in Cade Brown. Honeycutt back to the outside. Cody Kelly back to the outside. And then you see Connor Zilish and Stephen Nasse rounding out your top 10, with now Kelly electing to jump up on the outside lane. That 13 car of Cody Kelly, that is.
And a long line of cars behind Carson Quapple. You have Zilish who's into the mix. How about Stephen Nasse also pulling up to the back end of that 57 car. They lead Dale Earnhardt Jr. as well as Justin Milliken. Haven't mentioned his name probably as much as we should have tonight, but a long-tenured racer at Myrtle Beach Speedway. Competed oftentimes in the Myrtle Beach edition, and in fact finished second in 2011 to Garrett Campbell in the Myrtle Beach 400 over a decade ago. He's found himself in front of a NASCAR Hall of Famer and Dale Earnhardt Jr. Contact further up the road. Bice and Barry almost came to blows there in 3 and 4.
Bice was trying to do everything possible to get down if the opportunity presented itself, and she was able to do just that behind that of Matt Cox, with Cody Kelly still working the top side. Barry in between that battle. As we move further up ahead, it is Honeycutt holding down the second spot. Casey Kelly in the 16 outside of Matt Cox in the 51, and what is a battle for the 3rd position.
Kelly has been able to move all around the racetrack, but unfortunately not able to get down to the bottom. You can see Bice right there trying to keep that 16 on the outside going into turn 3. Laney Bice starting to show a lot of speed right now, pulling up to the back of the 51. Bice carving her way through this field, trying to get by Kelly and even Honeycutt back into the 2nd position. Matt Cox is still looking for a way around. You have to wonder how patient, when does the knob start to turn for Josh Berry, because this was a race that took like an hour and a half to complete 40 laps or so. Already we're on lap 135. We're continuing to roll on here. And I'd imagine at this pace, Eric, if we keep this up, I mean, 150 laps is a long time in a late model stock race, but I think would be enough that without much attrition or a whole lot of yellows happening, that fuel would not be a concern if we continue along this juncture. Still a long way to go, obviously, but that could be a part of things as well, that we would be fine to go there to the end.
That is the hope in which we are all carrying, and we are about to test the back end of the field. You see on the right side of your picture, Cade Brown is about to encounter the cars that are on the tail end of the lead lap. Again, 31 cars remain on the racetrack, all 31 on the lead lap. David Roberts is going to be the first car that Cade Brown has to try to get by. And once the spotters tell all these drivers, you see them flash up here with this pack being led by Brendan Butterbean Queen in 27th. Once the spotters start telling them that the leaders are coming, then we're going to start to see the intensity pick up.
Yeah, that's 11 seconds behind the race leader. It's about 7 in front. That you can see that gap to the line that Queen is leading off of turn 4. This is 27th. That's your race lead. That's how close that Cade Brown and the rest of this pack that is running up front now have continued to push their tires. Now, again, this is planned, but you have to imagine, Eric, the next couple of laps, Brown continues to get closer. That pace that is setting itself right now in the low 20s for that group that is fighting to stay on the lead lap, probably going to pick up a little bit.
We made the parallel in reference to Cade Brown's career as you watch a battle start to materialize for the 7th spot with Carson Quapp on the left side of your picture. It appears as though Cade Brown is at a point in his motorsports career where he is on a similar trajectory as to what Brendan Butterbean Queen was a year ago. Known for winning at whatever he classifies as his home track, or the track in which he will commit to, and has been so close to winning on a touring level or against a field of this caliber, if you will. With that in mind, though, Brown has shown flashes of brilliance across all forms of late model stock competition he's ever participated in. Could tonight be the night where he gets to add his name to the list of winners of this race against what is a very strong field of race cars? Still a long way to go for that of Cade Brown and company, but it is of no surprise that he is leading this race.
No, none at all, especially for these fans who are here at Florence Motor Speedway during driver introductions. A lot of cheers for many of these local drivers that have competed and won here at this racetrack, and Cade Brown, no exception to that, got a handful of applause amongst many of the faithful here at Timmonsville, South Carolina. Honeycutt, Matt Cox, and Laney Bison. I know we're not probably giving the due for that 51 machine of Matt Cox, was second in the late model stock points here this season. Was the track champion. It was second a year ago. He won the championship, track championship this year. It was Cade Brown that did that in 2022. But for Cox, who was just really set in third, we've talked about a lot of drivers who have been moving up the running order, drivers who have been falling down. And Matt Cox, he's pretty much been in the third position all night long. And I think that's a testament indeed to how strong that race car is, no doubt about it.
Unlike his teammate in Sam Yarborough, who we saw fade at the opening portion of this race, and then when this race got back going, Yarborough also faded all the way down to 20th in the running order. Matt Cox and that machine appear to be on a different level, if you will, as far as being able to maintain consistent pace throughout the duration of a run, as he continues to ride there in third position, but under heavy pressure, as he was all season long from that of Laney Bice. That was your top two in the championship standings here, the 51 and 21, running third and fourth respectively, with Brown continuing to pace the field.
There's a lot of pressure being applied. I mean, they're running just in a chain right now. Almost looks like a chain race forward to back, and you could really say that from Matt Cox, who runs in the third position, really all the way back to Landon Huffman, somebody else who we haven't mentioned much through the course of the night, has been outside of the top 20 for the majority of it, but currently rides in the 13th spot, directly behind Dale Earnhardt Jr., and probably one of the last cars that out of this accordion, out of this line that we see that's attached to the front. However, that gap in front of Cade Brown that we showed a little bit earlier for those cars, starting to narrow up to the lap traffic as we see. This is the tail end of that long pack of the first 13 cars that have kept pace, at least for the moment, with Cade Brown.
There you see Landon Huffman on the left side of your picture, and the family-owned and operated car here tonight, of course, was tagged to drive the Nelson Motorsports number 22 in the Cars Tour, and also in the Valley Star Credit Union 300. Grabbed $30,000 to win in the Old North State Nationals at Tri-County. It came up one spot shy of a grandfather clock in what was an absolute thriller in terms of a finish there at Martinsville, and we may be in store for more of the same. 100 laps to go in the South Carolina 400, and it is still Cade Brown out front.
I think there's plenty of stories when you think about drivers who have had to battle their fair share of attrition in this race, and you can see some of the remnants of that in the contact that Katie Hettinger had in that wreck into turn number 3 with Tristan McKee, yet continues to run in the 15th position right now ahead of Jacob Hefner for Carroll's Speed Shop and a couple of cars as she kind of has her own piece of real estate right now. Several car lengths back to the car that runs just up the road, and Landon S. Huffman. Gee, that could be a tough one as an announcer. Landon Huffman 13th, Landon S. Huffman 14th. But also sports about a straightaway over the rest of the field behind her in 29 of Casey Wyatt, somebody else who, again, has battled and had a lot of issues tonight, but at least at this juncture running up towards the top 15.
A good run for that of Hedinger here, who's been involved in a couple of incidents here so far tonight. Perseverance may end up being one of our key words when this race is all said and done. No changes amongst the front five. It is still Brown logging laps up at the front of the field. And ever since we started to tee up that they were going to get into some of the cars that are running at the tail end of the lead lap, consequentially, that half of the field started to pick up their pace in a big way.
Again, I love the accordion effect that we see out of this lead pack. They were just running in the mid-19s. Now they're running 22nd lap times. That entire pack that we saw that Butterbean is leading, that's in front of the leaders, they're running half a second faster than a lot of the race leaders right now. So the tug of war amongst this is just so fascinating to watch. If you love a good chess match of a race, it can't go any better than what it's going right now. Still 55 laps into this run, and I would say that right now, yes, the cars that are in last are doing great right now. They're running down the race leaders by 3 or 4 tenths a lap, give or take.
We mentioned Brendan Butterbean Queen dropping back to save in such an aggressive manner that at one point I thought maybe that car sounded different. It's because he wasn't hammering the throttle off the corner. He apparently has decided that he wants to stop the bleeding down in the mid-20s, and he's running in a 26th position and starting to work his way a little bit further forward.
And again, it's not just him who's employing this. Several cars that he's around that have been strong all night long. You see Trent Barnes and Doug Barnes that are surrounding that 0-3 car, even a couple of positions back. Josh Williams, somebody in that number 11 car. There was a lot made about his debut here in a late model stock for a car that Chris Throckmorton tried to qualify or attempted to qualify in this race for last year, that has been prepared and combed over by Colleague Racing. Currently running behind this group, and I'm sure trying to save tires as well.
Oh, boy. Oh. That was Dave Roberts who almost got hip checked off the track in front of Trent Barnes.
That's the left-hand side of your screen. Oh, Lainey Bice had to check up there. She almost got run off the track off of turn number 2 as she was looking to challenge for that 3rd position. Kelly trying to make his way back by, and I just have to wonder, Eric, how much longer is Josh Berry, who we have seen even still the fact that he's running back in the pack, not a scratch on that car, not as much of a slip out of Josh Berry all night long. When does he decide, okay, maybe enough's enough?
He's also in a bit of a logjam situation is that of Berry. Now trying to get further forward here on the 16 of Casey Kelly. I don't know how long he may want to be in this position, and would that be of Josh Berry? And eventually, as this race continues goes on, as strong as that car may be, making these passes are going to get all the more difficult as we get later in this run, especially if everyone is biding their time in similar fashion.
Carson Quapple knew he would be a factor at the end of this race and has spent a majority of the last 20 or 30 laps. I'm sure studying that 62 car, has been riding right behind him. His good friend and buddy behind him, and Connor Zilish, has elected to do the same. Cody Kelly there on the top side, and again, still attached to really the same cars we've been talking about. Justin Milliken, who we mentioned several laps ago, up in the top 10. Stephen Nassy also in 11th, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. still attached to this lead pack, running in the 12th position. So we start to see a move for that 2nd spot. That's Matt Cox, who very quickly gets by Honeycutt.
It appears as though some of these drivers and teams have set parameters as to when they want to start working their way back up towards the front. And evidently, we have come within the window in which Cox wants to do just that. Lainey Bice trying to follow. Honeycutt got a little bit loose there on the bottom of the racetrack, slid up almost into the side of the 21 car, was able to avoid contact. Cox to 2nd. Here comes Bice in the 21 for 3rd.
Once again, you can see how well that 21 and 51 are rolling as Cade Brown, the young driver, tasked with setting the pace, which can be so difficult to do. Takes so much communication from the driver, understanding, looking in your rear view mirror, or perhaps even out the windshield at exactly what you want to see. And a lot of coaching from the spotter as well. They play a big part and how all of this plays out. You could still see Butterbean back here, who is still running amongst those just outside of the top 25, and Brown still up front.
Butterbean worked his way up now into the 25th position. Here he is at the start-finish line now. The leader is coming off of turn 4 and is at the line now. So Butterbean has started to feel a little bit of that heat of the leader closing up on him, and has decided now is when he wants to start picking off the field rung by rung on the ladder.
And just as Cade Brown looks like he's going to receive a challenge, everybody kind of ducks it back down and starts to back down the pace. And again, I wonder if the thinking starting this run was about how long we could potentially go. Would fuel become an issue? We're now 69 laps into this run, and yet if we continue to run laps at this juncture, fuel's not going to be a concern, but who can save an additional 50 laps? Couldn't think of a better way to settle the South Carolina 400 than somebody being tasked with, hey, by the way, we know this track's abrasive, we know we have to save, but 25 laps past that, let's see who's the best at the end.
Certainly created a very interesting dynamic as far as this race is concerned, as we start to see some of the fights that are taking place here further down the running order. That's the 02 on the left side of your screen, the black car inside of Cody Kelly in the white number 13. First time we've called this name throughout most of tonight, and Justin Milliken. Milliken, a driver who represents his family-owned operation, trying to take another swing at this race. He finished second to Garrett Campbell in the 2011 Myrtle Beach 400. His best finish here at Florence was 20th back in 2021. Milliken trying to better that in a big way, and he's currently rounding out the top 10 in that 02.
At least when we look at the timing charts, this line is still about 2 or 3 tenths rather, off of what you're seeing out of Cade Brown. And we've seen this time and time again. Brown gets caught, starts to back off, takes another lap or two and builds up a couple car lengths, and is just kind of seesawing back and forth in the lead between both Matt Cox and Laney Bice, who has made her way up into the 3rd position. Honeycutt still strong in 4th. A change for 5th as Carson Quapple has overtaken and has made a pass on Josh Berry, who now sits in the 6th position. And has a couple of cars that are hounding the back end of that 62 car, one of being Kelly, who has been up at the front all night long.
There are several cars that may be at a point to be in max save mode as we hit the line here with 75 laps to go. Cade Brown out in front of this field. We mentioned the success he had in terms of track championships and big wins. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention he also won the $17,500 to win event at the Orange Blossom in October back at Orange County Speedway. Tip of the cap to Wesley Outland for passing that nugget along for us here. So Cade knows how to get it done when it is ultra important. The question is, has he been working too hard to stay up front at this point in the race with still such a long way to go?
See the lead that he's been able to build up, and those lap cars starting to inch back closer to him, or many of those who have had those issues tonight. We saw that line that Yarborough, that Queen, that Barnes and a couple others are running, that they've been super saving. They've continued to pull away from your race leader. Side by side, Caden Honeycutt on the top side of Carson Quapple right now. That's a battle for the 4th position. Mentioned Barry had just gotten passed by Quapple, and now trying to take another spot on Honeycutt to try to get up into the 4th position. And what a year it was for Carson Quapple. Again, another late model stock car championship in his back pocket, and did so by making virtually 0 mistakes all year long. If anything, it was the end of the season, despite what he had been able to do early in the year. Some weaker runs than what they were accustomed to were still good enough to win the Cars Tour Championship. What a statement it would be to go out for him in his racing season to follow up with a South Carolina 400 win, and he looks awfully capable of being able to challenge for it now.
One of the few races in which they have thrown the gauntlet at in order to try to take down that he is yet to grasp in his young racing career is that of Carson Quapple, who now is up into the 4th position as they come back down to the line. Brown, Cox, Bice, your top 3. Quapple right in the middle of that frame on the left side of your screen, ahead of Caden Honeycutt, who rounds out your top 5, and Josh Berry, who led most of the opening laps of the first stanza of this symphony we are writing here today at Florence. Casey Kelly just behind in 7th. Zilish, Cody Kelly, Justin Milliken, still your top 10.
Again, you have to wonder how much those cars out back, they're really going to be able to have something here as we start to move kind of towards the latter part of this race. This is beyond the longest run that we've had so far tonight. This is beyond or getting close to what we thought would be the longest run of the night for some of these drivers, now approaching 80 laps. But yet, still, such a long ways to go. If your car is not handling well right now, just under 70 to go. We're past halfway in this run, but still such a long way to go. And I think very soon we'll start to see some of those cars that maybe push the issue a little bit too hard. And it's really at this point of the run that you start to find out what you have. There are drivers in this field. They think they have safe tires, but once they get about 10 or 20 laps from now, they're going to hit the throttle and they're just going to wonder where it went, or if they weren't saving enough, they don't have the car to be able to get the job done. And really, next 10 or 15 laps, we're going to find that out.
Then you're going to start to see cars that aren't handling all that well start sliding around the racetrack. It gets harder to race side by side, and that is almost a perfect storm to what leads up to thrilling finishes like what we had here just 1 year ago, as the field starts to somewhat accordion back together again. All the while, Cade Brown is closing up on the tail end of the field. There's one car that is several laps down out there right now, Tristan McKee, who is running in the 32nd position, so 32 cars out there after they got the 7 back out on the speedway. But he is 5 laps down off the leaders, and he may be the first car in which Cade Brown is going to have to encounter.
And that brings a whole different dynamic into this race, right? Everybody wants to run around the bottom. That is the lane that you're going to save your tires the best. But as Brown approaches this lap traffic 1, do they try to speed up to stay on the lead? Lap 2, where does Brown and the rest of the field go if they're taking their preferred line? Do they go to the middle? Do they venture up to the top side before they want to go there and perhaps use a little bit of the Hoosiers before they're comfortable doing so? So many things to ponder. You can see that decision's going to have to come in the next couple of laps for Cade Brown.
And I think when we start to see drivers start to exercise the upper grooves on each end of the racetrack, that may be the telltale sign that we're starting to get to the point of the race where things are going to shift a little bit. There are drivers looking for pace and whatever opportunity they could find it, wherever they could find it, on this 4/10 of a mile racetrack. And Cade Brown is about to find himself right in the middle of that mess, with Matt Cox keeping him honest all the way through.
And not only that, coming up on some very strong race cars. Ronnie Bassett Jr., we mentioned, he kind of employed this strategy in the Cars Tour race back in March, backing up all the way to the leader, and then was able to complete a spectacular drive up through the rest of the field. We'll see if he kind of turns on the gas or if it's just really not meant to be tonight for that of Ronnie Bassett Jr. Just a couple of car lengths now in front of your race leader, Tristan McKee, 5 laps down. It's going to lay over and allow these guys to start to go to work on some of these other lap cars.
Heads up move by that of McKee, who yields to the top 2. That does allow Cade Brown to open up a little bit of an advantage there at the moment, with more traffic out the windshield and now double wide in front of your race leader. Next couple of cars in which Brown is going to have to encounter are going to be Anthony Adams in the 18A, Ronnie Bassett in the 04.
And side by side a little bit in front of this lead battle. They're continuing to work it out for Cade Brown. Matt Cox waiting in the wings in the 2nd position that he's found himself riding in now. Laney Bice in 3rd. You see the battle for 4th and kind of where everybody has settled out here for the last handful of laps or so. And especially how comfortable that Barry looks off the exit of 4 and how low he's able to exit. Again, we've talked about how just smooth that 62 car has looked all night long. And yet, rides in the 5th or 6th position. It's going to have to be time that in the next probably 5 or 10 laps, you're really going to start to see those cars that have something left. They're going to have to strut their stuff because Cade Brown is coming up on that lap traffic we mentioned. left-hand side of your screen, you can see Nassie and Dale Jr., who have gotten pretty acclimated in this race. Haven't made any contact, but have just been so close to one another all night long. And you're Stephen Nassie. It's a pretty cool moment, I think, in your young racing career.
Yeah, he got to go wheel to wheel with that of Bobby McCarty in what was one of his rare late model stock appearances just a handful of races ago for him in his professional slate. Now going wheel to wheel with that of two-time Daytona 500 winner Dale Earnhardt Jr. That's the battle for 11. I've kind of been keeping an eye on that 3 car, being that he certainly knows how to save to see how far he's climbing up the running order, and he's kind of been in about the 12th spot pretty much throughout the duration of this soon-to-be 100-lap run. But there are several cars on the racetrack now that are starting to fall off the cliff, if you will, in terms of comfort and handle. This may be when the 3 car starts to shine.
We'll see if the 23 car can keep shining on the right-hand side of your screen. First bit of lap traffic that he's going to have to encounter as we come around to 50 laps to go. Matt Cox able to get back to the throttle and keep pace a little bit closer than with Cade Brown. There's almost some contact there. That 18 car goes a lap down of Anthony Adams from Simpsonville, South Carolina. It's going to yield to Cox to allow him to go to the bottom of 3 and 4. It's Owens up the road for Cade Brown as well.
Owens, who had a pit earlier in the race in order to try to render repairs on that car, still running on the lead lap right now in the 30th position, matching the car number is that of Paul Owens, who was going to fall a lap off the leaders here. With Cox, Bice, Quapple still your front 4.
Tristan McKee is pulled down to the pit area. And with the way that car sounds, imagine that may be the end of the night for him. If not, it was voluntary for him to come back down at this juncture in the race, 5 laps down. Matt Cox still looking about a car length or so back of your race leaders. It's about a straightaway or so before Cade Brown has to encounter any more lap traffic. In these top 2, you can see the gap back to Laney Bice still hanging on at about 8 or 9 car lengths or so. And Barry's starting to slip further and further back for the 8 of Carson Quapple as he almost encounters some trouble in 3 and 4 with some of the lap traffic. And indeed, he'll make contact with the 30 of Owens in turn 4.
All the while, Brown and Cox still continue to run out in front of this field. And we've been trying to keep one eye on some of the cars that we thought would be goers at this point in the race. As we check in here on the battle for what is shaping up to be 4th position between that of Carson Quapple and Caden Honeycutt. And you're right, Blake, Josh Berry is falling a little bit further behind this fight. Laney Bice is in the mix as well in 3rd. Not seeing the progress of Josh Berry in that 62 car with 45 laps to go.
And the one thing we've really seen in the last 5 laps is how much this track has really started to widen out. We don't see too many drivers that are hanging on and just running around the bottom and trying to make time. Drivers are starting to search in these last 50 laps, middle, high side. They're trying to get it done wherever they can. As Barry kind of in a world on his lonesome right now as the rest of the field has their hands full of some battles.
Trying to keep an eye on that of Josh Berry, who continues to run in that 6th spot. The other car that we were trying to keep you abreast on was the 03 of Brendan Butterbean Queen. He is up to 16th. So they have decided that now may be a good opportunity for that car and that driver to go. The question is, should this race stay green? Did he fall too far behind in order to make it count in what he hopes to be back-to-back wins in this race? Talked about Brendan Butterbean Queen, and there he is trying to chase down Landon S. Huffman. He's sandwiched between a pair of Landon Huffmans. The 28 is out of a Pinnacle Racing Group entry, similar to the Arkham Menard Series car that you may have seen throughout the year, driven by Luke Fenhaus. That is Landon S. The S stands for Shane because his father is former NASCAR driver Shane Huffman, who also serves as the primary crew chief and general manager for this operation. And so far, Landon S. Huffman has been doing a great job, even with a little bit of a blemish there, right in the passenger side door of that car. But Butterbean is about to overtake him for that spot. Milliken also starting to fall back just a little bit.
Well, again, this is one of kind of the downsides of employing this saving strategy. And nobody's running faster, especially here through the middle of the field, than Butterbean. But you run into traffic, and it can be hard to pass. He's faster than the cars in front of him, several of them, there's no doubt. you run into these log jams where you're not able to use that little bit of tire that you've built up and you've had. And I think for Butterbean, you kind of look at what, you know, the opposite of what we saw with Clark Houston last night. He didn't want a caution because he got such a big lead. I think if you're Butterbean, you have really good stuff right now. A caution would put you right up against
there it
trouble.
is.
That's Milliken around.
And he's not going to be the only one to spin. Another car goes around. Milliken was the first one to go for the slide, and just as we were talking about him running up towards the top 10, the other car involved is out of Williams Sawalich, who's got heavy front-end damage. Well, Blake, this may be just what the doctor ordered for Josh Berry, Brendan Queen, and more, who were on max save mode in terms of saving the best for the latter portion of this run and race. And this is the reason why we slowed what was a 112 consecutive lap effort, Landon Huffman, into the side of the O2 of Milliken.
Yeah, you can see Huffman on the bottom of the racetrack. And even I think that's some of the LPP group that was on the top of that hauler reacting to that caution right there. Some of them, I'm probably sure they're at least a little bit happier that may be the case, but you can see the damage for William Sawalich, and what a 2023 racing season that he has had. Has not left late model stock car racing, but has been able to have success in so much of that he has hopped into. Very talented young man that he is. And one more look at it here. Watch the 0-2. Huffman's going to dive down to the inside. He's running his left side tires are nearly on the dotted line that lines what's kind of the apron at the exit of the corner. And yeah, there you see the LPP group. There's a bit of a fist pump there, I believe. That's a Junior Motorsports hauler, perhaps.
That might have been
somebody was happy to see it.
That might have been the yellow flag that a lot of drivers and teams were certainly looking for in terms of what their agenda and strategy is for this race. And what happened to Matt Cox? Cade Brown is still the leader. The 51 car, trying to find, as we were watching the replay, something must have happened with the 51 here. I happen to notice that Carson Quapple was now the second place car while parading around the field.
And I think he may be stopped. Might be stopped down on the racetrack in turn 3. We'll see. There's a safety truck out there. Again, tough from our vantage point to see if that's where he came to rest. But yeah, I was looking at the running order and saw that it was Cade Brown and that Quapple had all of a sudden appeared in the second position.
We do know that there's a wrecker out in turn number 2 retrieving the 43 of William Sawalich. But at this point, I have yet to identify where the 51 has gone.
And he's not down in the pit area. The McCumbee Elliott bunch is pit. I mean, all three of their cars, rather, are pit right in front of us here on the front straightaway. And I think you could just barely see the remnants of that car that is just blocked by that hauler entering turn 3, and that car has come to rest. At least I saw a little bit of blue there. I would imagine that's what it is.
Matt Cox is running second in this race.
Yeah,
and
there
indeed,
he is.
There he is. Wow. So the second place runner, right as the caution fell, with 112 laps being turned in this race, has come to a stop at the end of the back straightaway.
Now, he may be looking to just get a push, which, again, caution laps, we're not going to count them yet. He's been sitting there for quite a while now. If he were able to get fired up and back going, he'd be fine at this point.
Boy, for Matt Cox, this has unfortunately been part of the story for the driver who wrapped up yet another track championship here at the Florence Motor Speedway. His best finish in this race, 9th. It was back in 2020. We mentioned the bad luck that plagued him in terms of being involved in a crash late in the going in this race last season, all while running up in the top 5. For the other big race in which they had, like the locked-in race, Earlier this year, he finished 5th, 4th at the Icebreaker.
And perhaps I wonder, Eric, I mean, I know we're at lap 212 or so, and I know that we were thinking about, you know, at a certain juncture whether fuel could perhaps become a factor in this race. I know, I mean, we were planning on running 125 laps through, and we went all the way green. But could that potentially be the issue here for Matt Cox? He's receiving a push. There's no damage to that race car. Could it be fuel for that number 51?
And we are starting to see a lot of movement throughout the pit area. We've also gotten a bit of confirmation from Jacqueline Drake, who's down trackside, as Cox is going to be released from the push truck and come down to the attention of his crew. But this does appear that it is going to be an opportunity for these teams to come down and top off the fuel in their cars to hopefully make it to the finish.
Well, and again, I think for Matt Cox, this is actually going to work out. If he was running that low and he was out of fuel, he was still scored in second when we go back to that last completed lap under green. So, at least to my understanding, would still keep his position up in the second spot with caution laps not counting if he were able to refuel in the rest of the field, although he's taking the hard left-hand turn and going to the hauler.
One of the telltale signs, the gloves were off inside the car.
Oh, man.
Indicating that Matt Cox's 2023 South Carolina 400 is going to come to an end. The multi-time winner and champion here at this racetrack, again, had a car that was in contention to win, and the steering wheel is coming off and the driver is getting set to climb out. You can only imagine the dejection that Matt Cox is feeling after he has run so well here in this race in his short history here at the Florence Motor Speedway. But he is someone who we always know is going to be a threat and a contender when it comes to this style of racing at this venue. Absolutely gut-wrenching and heartbreaking for him. What we see there, Jacqueline Drake is standing down there with him. Let's hear from Matt Cox. Hopefully we'll have a chance to hear from him here in just a moment. Cox was climbing out of the car and debriefing there momentarily with Jacqueline Drake to talk about what may have transpired to put him out of this race. As the field continues to circulate here under the caution flag with Cade Brown, the leader, newcomer Carson Quapple up into the second position, Laney Bice third, Caden Honeycutt fourth, and by virtue of Matt Cox falling out of the race, that's going to move the number 62 car of Josh Berry up into the fifth position. And we are seeing the field come down just as we did when we hit the race break at lap 100. This is going to be an opportunity for teams to add fuel only. That has been the directive by the officials. The only thing you can do to these cars is top them off with fuel to get you to the finish.
Not going to be quite the period of time that we saw a little bit earlier. Of course, all the adjustments and everything that could be made. Did you see the officials trying to signal and wait to give everybody the same amount of time to fuel up? While this is going on, let's toss it down trackside to Jacqueline Drake.
Heartbreaker moment for the 51 of Matt Cox, who's out of his car. Matt, walk me through what happened here.
Yeah, I don't know. We had some issues in practice a little bit, and nobody's fault. And we just, I don't know, we slowed down for the wreck there, and we downshifted and went to give it some gas and lost oil pressure and died. So I don't really know what it could be. I don't know if something messed up, something electrical. We had to put a battery in it there at that first break. We put a battery in it, so I don't know if it's something electrical or something with the motor. It just died, but I just got to thank everybody that made it possible. We had a good race car. We was just sitting there cruising. I don't know if we had anything for the 62 car, or I'd like to give it a shot, but felt like we were in a good position to try to have a shot to win it.
Matt Cox, so much success here at Florence Motor Speedway. He got out of the car and he said, every year it's something with this race. Bad luck tonight in the South Carolina 400 for that 51 team.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And thanks to Matt for being able to fill us in on what took him out of this contest here with still 38 laps to go. The teams are going to refuel the cars. We're going to refuel on our side as well. We'll be right back with the final 38 laps of the 2023 Charlie Powell Memorial South Carolina 400 from Florence. "38 laps left to settle the 2023 running of the Charlie Powell Memorial South Carolina 400 here from the Florence Motor Speedway in Timmonsville, South Carolina. I'm Eric Brennan alongside of Blake McCandless. Jacqueline Drake has been busy here tonight with all that has taken place so far in the first 212 laps of this 250-lap affair. And we've seen a lot transpire. We've seen a shift in agendas like what's taking place right here. The initial format for this race called for a halfway break at lap 125 of 250. Well, because we had several cautions, mostly coming after lap number 62, we ended up seeing the teams run an excess amount of caution flags, and it put us in a position to have to roll that break back into lap 100 and allow the teams to come down to bolt on tires and add fuel. Well, because of that of course now prolonged the second stint of this race. So here, because of an organic caution that took place after Justin Milliken and the 75 of Landon Huffman tangled down in turn number 1, the officials decided this was the opportune time to let teams come down and make sure that they have enough fuel to get to the finish.
Well, again, I think hats off being forthright about it. And even under the midst of that last caution, there were a couple of spotters coming up here into the sweet area and everything say, hey, we're sputtering or we're running low. So the track was quick to react to it, allow these drivers that fuel will not be a concern. Tires will be. Where you are, track position, all of those things will be a concern, but fuel certainly will not be. Allow these drivers plenty of time to not make any adjustments, but just add fuel to these race cars. But for more, we'll head down to Jacqueline Drake as we wrap things up here at Florence.
Yeah, guys, during that quick fuel break, I poked my head in that 51 window. And I said, how are things going for you, Steven? He said, man, it's been a struggle. He qualified in that 24th position. He's now sitting in 9th, and he said, it has not been easy. I've been driving so hard behind the wheel. And I told him, I said, hey, guys, you've been making it look easy as you work through the field here. He said, I'm just going to try to hold on here in the closing laps.
Thanks, Jacqueline. I mean, a late model stock car may not necessarily be Stephen Nassie's weapon of choice, if you will, when it comes to going out and running in competition. We mentioned we are less than 7 days away from his last super late model win at the Florida's Governor's Cup in New Smyrna Speedway. He made his third ever Cars Tour late model stock start at Tri-County not that long ago, about a month ago. Finished top 5 in that race. But the good news for all of us race fans is this may be more of a common theme, seeing Stephen Nassie in that group come out of late model stock car competition. And even though he may be a little bit hard on himself here, he's currently rounding out the top 10 and maybe right where he wants to be in the late stretch run to close out this race.
And what this caution flag has set up, it kind of coincides with that part of the run where drivers are really going to start pushing. We're going to re-rack, restack this field, 2 by 2, and I think all of that patience that we've seen that had built up over the course of over 100 laps of green flag racing, I think nearly all of that is going to go out the window. I don't think any longer you're going to see Josh Berry just content to ride in the 5th position if his car would allow it. You're not going to see Connor Zilisch riding around. All of these drivers that have been up front and those who have been saving are thankful that this caution came out. They have the ability and the time now to try and chase down a victory tonight in the South Carolina 400. Let's see who can do it.
Carson Kvapil has yet to lead this race tonight. He's going to restart outside of Cade Brown, who wrapped up a track championship at the Hickory Motor Speedway, has several special distance races and wins under his belt already. Now trying to win the South Carolina 400. We're back underway with 38 laps to go.
And Junior out of line, 3 wide, further back in the field. And there may not be enough room for all of them to make it. It was Stephen Nasse that he had contact with and won, but they continue to roll on here. Better launch for Kvapil off the jump. They'll be neck and neck for the race lead between Kvapil and Brown.
Still 3 wide in the midfield. That's Josh Berry running up the hill into the side of Laney Bice while the battle for the lead continues on the backstretch. Kvapil surges forward.
And Kvapil jumping up to the top side. Haven't seen him really run up there all night long. But as you can see, both of these cars sliding off at turn 4. The patience is done. These drivers are going to get back to the throttle. If they have tire left, by God, they're going to use them. Still side by side for the race lead. Honeycutt, he's emerged into the third position, rather, as one car slow at the top end of turn 2. Let's see if Truett Miranda can make it around. And it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Caution flag is out.
And the best news for Carson Kvapil is at the last completed lap, by less than 1/10 of a second, he was the leader. So Kvapil is going to have control of this race and upcoming restart after Truett Miranda has slowed to a stop right where the edge of the pavement meets the grass in turn 2.
See his hand out the window trying to give those signals, and that's exactly what we talked about coming into that restart, was the aggression is going to pick back up. And what a jump at the called double aught start line that Carson Kvapil was able to get on the outside line. And you know, kind of a divergence from what we saw yesterday, in that a majority of the leaders in each of the divisions that we saw elected to take the top side. It was the favorable lane. Yet late in this race, every leader we've had, Barry's been comfortable with it, Cade Brown's been comfortable with it. Now we get to see Carson Kvapil got a great launch off the top side. Does he elect to go there again, or is he thinking about going down to the bottom?
Decisions, and still 36 laps to go to figure out who may have timed their time to put. And speaking of push, how about Dale Earnhardt Jr. on that restart? We mentioned he was kind of flirting with the 12th position throughout the duration of that 112 lap run that we had after we restarted the race on lap 100. Well, he was wasting no time to dive to the inside and put Stephen Nasse in the middle of a 3-wide situation in turn 1, and that's got Junior up into the 9th spot.
And I'm not quite sure if that was a checkup, but nevertheless, getting aggressive on these restarts. I won't say the problem with Junior, the problem with all of these cars that are kind of on the outskirts of the top 10 and looking at some of the lap times that they've been able to run. How about Jacob Hefner? I mean, he's somebody that has really come on strong late in these races, and that has been his mantra throughout his late model stock car career, is being able to race forward, particularly at the end of these races. He has Connor Zilisch, his teammate, who's going to start up the row. And I think one of the fastest cars, or at least one of the best tires, 4 sets of tires that we see out there, is just behind them in Queen. Who again was able to make up a pair of spots or so on that last restart. So all 4 cars that are outside of the top 10, you could throw Zilisch in there, Earnhardt Jr., Hefner, Queen, pretty much all in the same boat where they rode around, they saved their stuff, and I think they're in a really good position now. The problem is they're all around each other. So who can escape out of that bunch?
And we've seen several times, not only in late model stock car racing as a whole, but this weekend, where the line that you end up in on the restart, you could have one car further a few rows up that makes a little bit of a mistake or doesn't get enough of a launch, and it could bog down that entire row, and you could lose 3 or 4 spots that you may have just worked so hard to get. So that's also something to keep in mind here. You want a nice, clear, and clean launch by both rows in order to give yourself a fair shot when you get down to the first corner. And it appears as though our race leader in Carson Kvapil, Blake, he liked how that car hooked up on the top side. That's his choice for this upcoming restart.
And again, I think as we go later on, that inside lane probably becomes a little bit weaker of a lane to restart. And think about it, 125 laps is as far as we were supposed to go on these tires under green flag conditions. We're at 114 right now. And we've talked about it throughout the running of this entire weekend, that coming to these restarts and just the patience and the acumen and the skill that it takes for these drivers to take tires that are as worn out as they are to get through the gears. Again, in these late model stocks, you got to push the clutch down. You got to shift these gears. There's no magic to these race cars. You have to shift them, and that is a tall task when you talk about coming here to Florence Motor Speedway, where the tires want to spin every little bit that you get on the throttle. It's a unique challenge we don't often see, or at least is unique to this Diamond of the Southeast.
Carson Kvapil has run this race twice before and has finished second both times. It appears as though the driver of that number 8 car does not want to be denied, and he turned the fastest lap of his race the last lap before the yellow. And he's in control for the restart with 36 laps to go. Cade Brown to his inside. Honeycutt and Casey Kelly, row 2. And then, of course, the early race leader, Josh Berry, rounding out the top 5. We're back underway with 36 to go.
A unison launch, but give the advantage to Kvapil by just about a nose, as he's going to elect to run the outside in turns 3 and 4. Give Cade Brown plenty of room. Is he able to get back to the throttle, though? What a drive by Cade Brown off the exit of the corner. Thought Kvapil could carry that momentum, but not able to do it just yet. He may have it here off of 2.
Brown appears content to try to make that inside line work, if at all possible. And he's able to pull a little bit closer up alongside the 8 cars. They come out of turn number 4, and down the front stretch they come, and a monster launch there by Kvapil as they come off 4.
Guess who's already challenging for 3rd just behind this? This is Josh Berry, who is already trying to work his way up past Caden Honeycutt. He very quickly started 5th, and I think the patience is out of that 62 car. He's going to start to make some moves to try and chase down your top 2. Kvapil, though, still ahead by a car length.
Trouble front straightaway. Trent Barnes and Josh Williams tangle off of turn number 4.
And I think somebody else caught a piece of that as well. It's dragging a little bit of their race car along with them out of turn 2. Think Bryant Barnhill he definitely caught a piece of that.
One car got way wide off at turn number 2, and by the time I saw them out of our vantage point off turn 4, they were just about 4 wide with the concrete wall fast approaching on corner exit, and there just wasn't enough room for anybody to be able to make it off the corner safely. And unfortunately, I think the most damage may have been done to the Colleague Racing number 11 of Josh Williams, who has badly damaged the front end of his car. Trent Barnes is able to drive away. And Williams is going to call it a night.
Yeah, you can see Barnhill there just past us in your screen. Hefty amount of damage on that race car as well. And you mentioned it, 3 and 4 wide off of turn 4, where we have seen a lot of incidents so far, kind of heading towards the inside retaining wall and towards the entry of turn 1. Has been a trouble spot. We'll take a look at it one more time. And Yarborough, and that was further up the road, and I think that was in reaction to that contact that was a little bit further ahead. There's the aftermath as Josh Williams makes heavy contact. Barnhill had nowhere to go.
If you want visual evidence as to whether or not we are in the portion of this race where it's go time, it was all right there. That was about 3 different wrecks. Only one of them actually happened. This one, unfortunately, though, is going to claim that of Josh Williams. He is going to retire from the race. Brian Barnhill is on the pit lane for service as well. And Trent Barnes remains out on the racetrack here, circulating under this caution flag. So much happening in that moment. We We saw the initial contact with the outside retaining wall happen with our pole sitter, Sam Yarbrough. Now look at the top of your screen. 3 wide off the corner. That's Williams in the middle. Barnhill up to the top side. The blue roofs that you see coming into your picture behind Yarbrough, he tags the wall, does that of the 95.
I think that was Hettinger and Yarbrough further up the road that tangled too. You have to wonder all that was going on, if that was kind of separate or in reaction to, perhaps anticipating what may happen with 3 and 4 wide further back in the field. Didn't work out for anybody.
Things narrow up quickly as they come off of turn 4 here at the Florence Motor Speedway. Well, a much anticipated Colleague Racing debut for that of Josh Williams is going to come to a close with 34 laps still to go in this race. Jack LaDrake is standing by with him. Well, we'll try to check up with Josh a little bit later on should the opportunity present itself. There he is out of the car. Debriefing with that of Chris Rice, who has come down for this race after the announcement was made quite literally days prior to that hauler rolling into this racetrack. And Josh has pretty much been all smiles throughout this race and this weekend, and even after what's going to be a disappointing end to this first foray together as a unity as they prepare for the 2024 Xfinity Series calendar. Nevertheless, sure that he's going to walk away here with what was a pleasant experience, but not the most pleasant of endings.
Well, again, I know really proud to represent Alloy, and then, you know, wanting in tandem with running in the Xfinity Series next year that they're willing to work it out and be able to come out and run the South Carolina 400. Didn't start out the way that they wanted, but again, I think there's a lot to look forward to for this driver who now is standing by with Jacqueline Drake.
Josh Williams retiring early for the evening. What happened there from your vantage point?
Well, I mean, we're supposed to have spotters, but I don't know. The guy underneath me just kept coming up. I checked up to try to just avoid it, but caught him in the right rear and wrecked all 3 of us. But I don't know. It's part of it. Had super fun. Learned a lot. Thankful Chris Wright, Matt Colleague, all them guys. So super appreciative of it, and look forward to the Xfinity Series.
Thanks, Jacqueline, and we'll see what Josh could do in 2024. We'll see what this field is going to do with 34 to go. Carson Quapple outside the leader. Cade Brown on the bottom. We're back underway. Watch Josh Berry outside in the 62, trying to follow Quapple up towards the front of the field.
See the separate line that he was willing to take through the middle there. Brown still challenging on the bottom. But Berry, no patience at all. Is he going to make it 3 wide? He thought about it there for a moment, but no doubt about it, that 62 is fast, and he's saved. He's ready to get going.
And Cade Brown left just enough running room outside of the right side of his race car to allow Berry a chance to live to fight another lap as they almost came together off turn 4. And now Berry is going to commit to the bottom behind Brown as they both try to gain on Quapple off 4.
Several drivers trying to make a move. You can see 2 and 3 wide behind them as Junior's starting to make some headway up towards the top 5 of this race as well. As they fan out, you can see some of the smoke. I believe that was off of the 3 car, but Quapple still leads them. Brown holding strong, but Josh Berry, good launch, but now is stabilized with your top 2 through these laps.
And Junior is right smack dab in the middle of this hornet's nest. He's up to 8th and trying to get to 7th, maybe 6th from Casey Kelly and the 57 of Connor Zilish on the backstretch.
Man, look how deep Butterbean is able to drive into the corner. Is Junior going to look perhaps beneath the 16 car? It was almost 3 wide there for a moment as he looked to try and punch his way through that hole. He's got a huge run off of turn 2 and is looking to get to the back of Kelly. That would be for 6th position.
And that was what he needed. He needed a lane to try to get to the bottom because he was kind of boxed in behind Kelly as the teammates touched just behind him. That was Hefner into the back of Zilish off the corner to give Butterbean another spot.
A lot going on here in the middle part of the field, and Junior trying to run up against Casey Kelly. Cannot find a way around that 16 car through these couple of laps. Quapple still holding Brown at bay, at least for the time being, as they start to make some time up on Josh Berry. But trouble.
Turn 4, and that is, I believe, the 29 car that has gone off the racetrack at the exit of the 4th corner. Had to drive back up over the embankment, right where the leaders are just passing by. And that's going to slow this field yet again, this time with 29 laps to go. Casey Wyatt was running in the 19th position at the time of the yellow. And he is the reason why we are going to get to hit the refresh button once more.
It'll still be Quapple, who is your race leader. Brown going to start in second. And I have to say, Eric, as soon as Josh Berry, who was riding in fifth for so long, got cleared to third, I thought it was a conclusion. It'd be 2 or 3 laps. We see that 62 in the lead and gone. But at least for now, 30 laps to go. Still has a pair of positions to try and win his first South Carolina 400 at this racetrack.
You see Wyatt coming to the attention of his crew. He's not going to have a lot of time as we are on 1 to go before we try to get this race back off and running. Been very impressed with a couple of cars that have started to make their way towards the head of the field. One of them, of course, your race leader, and that of Carson Quapple. Since losing the lead, Cade Brown has not necessarily gone anywhere. Josh Berry appears to have saved enough to be very strong when it matters most. Honeycutt in the mix. Row 3, Laney Bice, along with Casey Kelly, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. is up to 7th spot as we get set for this restart with 29 laps to go. Quapple, the black car on the outside, the leader. Cade Brown, the white car on the bottom, in 2nd spot. We'll try it again. 29 laps remaining. And that time it's Cade Brown who's got a half car length advantage in the battle for the race lead on the inside of 3 and 4 with Josh Berry trying to follow.
Couple of fast cars trying to get around. I think what are some cars in front of them that they could pass, and both Queen and Junior as Bice slides up in front of Dale Earnhardt Jr. running in the 7th position. That's the left-hand side of your screen that you can see that battle commencing. 2 really fast cars, that 3 and that 03, have somewhere to try to get, but so does Cade Brown. Doesn't have an edge on Quapple at the stripe as they nearly make contact into turn 1.
That time Brown almost missed the bottom completely as we got Landon Huffman slow on the front straightaway and rolling to a stop with the battle for the lead continuing in 3 and 4. That is Huffman's car that elected to forego the pit entry lane and stop on the front straightaway. Not quite sure what may be up with the 75 car, but that car was slow on the backstretch and through 3 and 4, and from my vantage point, it looked as though he may have had a chance to get down to the pit lane, but he surpassed the pit entry and elected to stop a few hundred feet past the start-finish line.
Unfortunate there for Huffman, who we had talked about, had really struggled throughout this weekend trying to get this car righted. Was thrilled really when he found out that all of these cars were going to be allowed into the field, that qualifying was not going to be a worry. Was running in the 13th position at this point as he's pulled to a stop here on the front straightaway. You can see we'll have a courtesy of a push to try and get that 75 car fired up.
Now, as they start to clear that 75 car from the scene, last official completed lap, Cade Brown was the leader, and he will be in control for this upcoming restart. That spectacular launch that he had on the restart that came 1 official lap ago put him in front of Carson Quapple by 29 thousandths of a second, and that's going to give Cade the advantage to pick whatever line he wants to choose for the restart that's upcoming.
And I wonder if he kind of gives Quapple the line that has worked so well for him. He was choosing the bottom earlier. Quapple, when he got the race lead in that black car, elected to go up to the top side of the racetrack. And Barry, especially the first 3 or 4 laps, is where that car has been so good. Give it a couple laps, though, and it seems like it's stabilized with the 23 and the 8 in front of him. And I tell you what, Caden Honeycutt was making some hay up there on the top side of the racetrack, especially in 1 and 2. Seen him a number of times throughout the night go up there and try to make speed and make some moves. Trying to make that work out for him as you see the 75 has made it back to the pit area. And you can see they're going to add fuel to that race car. So was that the concern for the 75? They didn't put enough fuel in it to perhaps get to the end of this thing.
That's rather surprising because the stop for fuel came, what, 20, 25
Yeah.
laps ago? I'm not sure if that may be a fuel pickup problem that they're dealing with on that car, or if perhaps they just did not get enough in there when they took the break with what was just under 50 laps still to go in this race. We've still got 28 to go at this juncture.
So Huffman runs out of gas, and yeah, so he misses the pit lane and would not have been able, I mean, there's no way he would have been able to putz around there and be able to get all the way back to turns 3 and 4 once he bypassed it.
The good news for Huffman, he's already announced his plans in 2024. Going to move on over to Jimmy Morin Racing, team up alongside of Jared Fryer to see what they can do as a tandem in 2024 in terms of late model stock car racing. And I have to say, very impressed with the consistent level of pace that Cade Brown has shown, and he is back in control of this race. Outside, in the Matt Piercy Racing, number 23, the Junior Motorsports, number 8 of Carson Quapple, going to line up on the bottom. Getting set to restart this race yet again. 28 laps to go in the South Carolina 400. Brown and Quapple bring us back down for the restart.
It appears there will be a fuel pickup issue for Huffman, and he wasn't able to get out of the pit area. So it appears as if his night will be done. But up front, great launch from Cade Brown. Here comes Caden Honeycutt. What a move off of 2. He'll pull up alongside with Carson Quapple.
Honeycutt outside of Quapple. That's for second. Pass made in the turn 1. And coming with him, now slicing to the bottom, is that of Josh Berry trying to get up to third as Honeycutt takes sole possession of second place, side by side for third.
Berry driving it down deep. He gets close to Caden Honeycutt there and looks to have Quapple at the stripe, and indeed he does. But what can Honeycutt do? Can Berry get past a driver that he has been so instrumental in helping his racing career? But again, that 62 car we've seen 2 or 3 laps. Best car in the field. Give it a few and starts to run out of steam, but so far it is Cade Brown who has continued to stretch his advantage over Caden Honeycutt with 25 to go.
Last time around, Caden Honeycutt ran his fastest lap of this race. This may be the perfect launch in which he is looking forward to in terms of closing out this race on top as he tries to close in on Cade Brown, the leader. Quapple nearly nicked the wall off turn 4.
This has been a good side-by-side battle. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Brendan Queen, that have kind of been stuck behind that 16 and 21 8K performance cars, but just haven't had the speed to go up and straight up pass these cars. Your top 4, they're in a league of their own. They did the same thing on the last initial restart. But right now, Queen finally able to find a different lane to run the 16 at Kelly, and will try to make that spot up. Junior, I think, is going to follow suit if he can kind of take a toe behind that 03 car.
Speaking of being locked together, how about the Carroll Speed Shop cars right there as well? The white car, Connor Zilish, the white 57, Jacob Hefner in the black number 57 here tonight, 9th and 10th respectively. Pretty much been tied up like this all night long. Now both locked together behind that of Junior, who holds down the 8th position.
And again, we talked about separation. They're completely pulling away from all those cars. You see Stephen Nassy that's just trying to hang on. William Sawalich not quite able to do so. But look at the lead on the right-hand side of your screen that Cade Brown has been able to build up over Caden Honeycutt. That 23 car is hooked up right now and looks to have plenty of tire to continue to pull away. Meanwhile, Berry has not been able to get by Quapple.
Here comes Brendan Butterbean Queen to the inside of Laney Bice to get up into the top 5, while Junior gets a great launch off of turn number 2 to clear that of Casey Kelly to move, I would say, to take claim to the 7th position. Was scored in that spot a lap ago. And now he's going to get a good drive off the corner to try to pull up to this battle, which is again for 5th on back.
Getting out of Dodge right now is Caden Honeycutt. You can see Junior a little bit of a wiggle trying to get by Laney Bice. And Butterbean still not able to clear that 21 of Bice. Is he able to get by? Oh,
I think
so
he just
close.
about cleared himself there at the end of the back straightaway. Moved up to not only make the pass, but also to take over the top side. Now Bice gets loose on the outside. Look at this racing. Contact there. Junior into the side. Laney Bice off of 2, and they somehow keep it straight.
Hard checkup there. And Junior able to back out of it. little bit of contact definitely made. But somehow that could have been a lot worse. That 28 car, that's Landon S. Huffman, able to take advantage. That's a couple of spots out of that.
Landon S. Huffman starting to move forward into the top 10. He goes now inside of Bison. What is a battle for 8th spot? 15 laps to go in this race. And right now, Cade Brown has opened up a 1-second advantage at the front of the field. There is your margin between he and Caden Honeycutt in the battle for the race lead on the right side of your screen. Junior and Bice continuing to battle left side of your picture, after they all have been in such close proximity since we got this race back going with 29 to go. Several of the cars representing the battle scars that you would expect in a race that is scheduled to go 250 laps in total length. And it's hard to believe we are already at the point where we are starting to wait and see if there will be a tipping point for the number 23 of Cade Brown in terms of performance and speed.
At least as far as I can see, that 23 car just has a lot of the characteristics that we saw a little bit, you know, it's just really, really good right now. Some of the same characteristics we saw in a Josh Berry a little bit earlier in the race. Able to run the same line, be smooth. We've seen Honeycutt kind of move around and try to find some speed behind him. But right now, Cade Brown is just in a league of his own. Continue to watch the lap charts, and that 23 is continuing to pull away.
There's a lot of intense racing happening all about the field, and I think the last thing Cade Brown wants to see would be that of a caution flag. Josh Berry hasn't been able to move up all that far forward from 4th. Battle for 2nd starting to heat up between that of Caden Honeycutt and Carson Quapple, with Brown nursing now a 1.5-second lead.
And what is remarkable is the lead that they've all built up over the rest of the field. I mean, Brown just crossed the stripe. Brendan Queen, who's running in 5th, just crossed the stripe now. I mean, it's nearly half a racetrack. We talk about a 20-lap run or so. It's amazing what they've been able to build up, as David Roberts also made a dive down to the pit lane late. But he's able to get that car out of harm's way.
At the same time, at the back of the field, Doug Barnes got pinched up into the wall on the front straightaway, but he's able to keep it straight, and we stay under green.
Oh, Quapple, a big slide off of 2. Man, look at how far Carson Quapple is able to drive into turn 3 to try to catch Caden Honeycutt right now. I think Honeycutt trying to take a little bit of his line away, at least at the moment. All for naught as they continue to allow Cade Brown to build on his advantage. And a little bit of contact. Probably you can see that car starting to bottom out a little bit.
Brown now in position to perhaps be able to lay claim to an opportunity.
Was that one car that stopped? There's one car that's sitting on the outside of turn 1. And that may have been, you just mentioned that may have been Doug Barnes.
Oh, and Quapple! Something happened to Quapple's car there. A very awkward hop, skip, and a jump there in turn 3. Did something break on the right front of that car?
That was the second time he went through the high side of 3 and 4. And Quapple had an issue. And yeah, that was Doug Barnes right there. One car had just kind of pulled off, and I think this is the case. As you can see, a fire starting to brew underneath that 88 car. And Barnes trying to exit his way out of that race car. Crew quickly on scene as soon as the caution flag was flown.
The driver who kicked off his season with a victory here at the Icebreaker had very high hopes and a lot of pace for how this race would unfold. Battled back from some pretty significant damage that was sustained in an early race crash and was running in the top 15 at the time that this happened. So Barnes is going to have to get some help out of the grass here in turns 1 and 2. And we saw that very awkward bounce that the 8 car took under braking in turn number 3. And at first it looked as though maybe the car was bottoming out in a big way. But Blake, this looks really aggressive, and the 8 car remains on the racetrack in 3rd.
See it one more time, and yeah, he ran. I mean, the car hopped over something. I mean, there's got to be a dip or something out there in the middle of the racetrack, but something beyond what these drivers may have been dealing with throughout the course of the race. And as you mentioned, Quapple is still out on the racetrack. And, you know, we were kind of thinking about, you know, Trent Barnes had a little bit of an issue with part of the track coming up in 3 and 4. Dale Earnhardt Jr. had a little bit of an issue in practice where he got a little bit of nose damage, and both of those drivers kind of had the same perplexion that they didn't know exactly where that came from. Perhaps that, and I'm not saying it is by any stretch of the imagination, but perhaps that is. You can see visually as they pass by that little dip out there in 3 and 4.
Well, as the track crew, who's been working hard all night long, works to retrieve Doug Barnes from out of the racetrack surface in turns 1 and 2, we are going to take a very short break. 7-lap sprint to the finish to decide the 2023 South Carolina 400. We'll be back for the finish here on FloRacing. At the time of that yellow, it didn't seem like anything was going to stop Cade Brown for the chance to win the South Carolina 400 until a caution after Doug Barnes got off the racetrack in turns 1 and 2. Now he has to survive a restart with a newcomer to the front row in that of Caden Honeycutt. It is going to be Cade Brown in the 23 outside the race leader. Caden Honeycutt in the 10 on the bottom, going to try to take that lead away as they all look to close out 2023 on a high. The South Carolina 400 is 7 laps away from seeing who ends up in victory lane.
And Honeycutt using every bit of the racetrack. Contact into turn 1. Cade Brown is up the hill, and Caden Honeycutt to the race lead as Brown now clearing to second. A lot happening behind them. Contact between the 62 and the 8, and Brown going to give it back to Caden Honeycutt in turn 4.
And he returns the favor to get back to the race lead. Cade Brown to the point. Honeycutt to second. Quapple outside of Butterbean now as they battle for third.
It's getting physical up here at the front of the field as Brown pulls away by 2 or 3 car lengths. And at least in his mind, all is fair in love and racing as he's able to boot on by Caden Honeycutt, return what he thought was given to him. And he has enough of a race car that he's not going to have to worry about if Honeycutt may be able to drive back to him. Still stretching out his advantage over the rest of the field. But how about Butterbean now up into the top 3?
Butterbean on the bottom trying to work over that of Carson Quapple, also trying to get Honeycutt as well. Brown, though, trying to set sail as he did on the last run before we slowed the field with 7 to go. This the battle for second on back. There's the margin, 0.8 of a second for that of Matt Piercy Racing's Cade Brown, who is 3 laps away from a South Carolina 400 win.
And each and every lap, he continues to just drive away, sees the battling in his rearview mirror that's going on right here, and he absolutely loves what he's seeing. The best that late model stock car racing has to offer. You think about a Cars Tour back-to-back champion in Quapple, another championship behind him for Josh Berry. Brendan Queen, one of the hottest drivers in late model stock car racing right now, and yet they are all falling further and further away from Cade Brown.
On the left side of your picture, the battle for second. Right side, Cade Brown looking for an opportunity to add his name to a long list of race winners here. Heavy racing going on in the midfield, and here comes Cade Brown to the white flag. Cade Brown, who has wrapped up track championships here at Florence in the past, this year at Hickory. He's won several big league races, but this one may end up meaning the most of all. Off the final corner, Cade Brown wins the 2023 South Carolina 400. And in that spirited fight for second, Caden Honeycutt comes home in the runner-up position. Carson Quapple third, Josh Berry fourth, and Brendan Butterbean Queen your top 5. And the final time we get to say this, but it may be one of the most meaningful. This is the checkered flag moment brought to you by Advance Auto Parts. You see Caden Honeycutt drawing up alongside there. One would assume for a congratulatory message there after those two raced each other quite hard in a lap off the restart. But Cade Brown is going to bring that Matt Piercy Racing Group to victory lane at least one more time in 2023. This appears to be the right time of the season for this young driver to not only get hot, but stay hot.
And again, went to victory lane at the Fall Brawl at Hickory Motor Speedway a week ago. What a great way to close out this 2023 season. And Cade Brown, somebody that has been able to travel to a myriad of racetracks this season and prove that this is a team that can be contended with, but particularly when you show up to these venues with which he has experience, this team has experience, the speed that he has just simply can't be matched right now.
Unbelievable the level of pace that Cade was able to maintain. When we restarted this race on lap 100, 150 to go, and we saw Cade drive to the front of the field, we thought for sure there was going to be some evidence of fall off at some point as the fireworks go off here for the fans who stuck out for the opportunity to be here tonight. But for Cade Brown to be able to maintain that pace all throughout, including that of the final few restarts in which he had to endure what was some entertaining and physical combat with those closest and around him, and he was able to muster off and shrug off all the pressure, was that of Cade Brown, who has arrived in victory lane as our winner. You saw the crew start to come over, already look for an opportunity here to congratulate this young driver as he gets set to climb out of the car. Came up one spot shy of picking up a Cars Tour late model stock win at Hickory earlier this season, but that is not the case here tonight at the Florence Motor Speedway. Down in victory lane is that of Cade Brown, as is our Jacqueline Drake, with Cade Brown our winner.
Out of the car, Cade Brown! A shower happening down here in victory lane. It's the iconic celebration from Matt Piercy Racing, as he's going to receive congratulations all around from his crew members and family. Cade, when we spoke earlier today and I asked you about your car, you said, no, I don't feel confident at all. And then you went into qualifying, and now in victory lane. What changed in order for you to close it out today?
I really don't know. I feel like it cooling down and the racetrack gaining grip kind of played in our favor there. But like seriously, I thought we were drunk earlier today. I did not think we'd come out with a top 5 qualifier, or a win. I mean, this is incredible. I'm kind of at a loss for words here, but man, that was tough. I felt like we burned a little bit too much there at the beginning. So I knew when we put tires on that second time that wanted that clean air, and I just wanted to kind of set the pace for everyone. So just so happy it worked out. Just got to thank Matt Piercy Racing. I mean, I feel like we're on a roll here at the end of this year. Velosto, Courier Tank Lines, Carolina Drive Line, Race City Steelers, everyone that makes this all possible. My mom, my dad, Zachariah's family for giving us this facility to race at. Yes, thank everybody.
You're 2022 track champion here. You just won the Hickory Championship in the Fall Brawl just a couple of weeks ago. But when it comes to being here at Florence and all the situations that happened in this race, the strategy was all over the place. What was Matt telling you in your ear in order to do in those last laps?
I mean, Matt's the man making the calls. He wanted clean air and he wanted to set the pace. So we knew if we just protected the bottom there, and I don't think anyone would want to burn their stuff up to get by us. So we kind of set the pace there, and I'm happy it all worked out. I was a little worried there when we started having those yellows, but man, it all paid off.
Cade Brown set the pace and ultimately took home the South Carolina 400 win.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And that trophy that is positioned right over his left shoulder, already on top of the race car. What a beautiful looking trophy that is, in which Cade Brown is going to be taken home with him. You see some of the members of the Carroll Speed Shop team, and that of Connor Zilish and Jacob Hefner coming over to offer up congratulations. And they're all smiles after they were knotted together in a fight of their own throughout most of this race. Both of those cars ended up in the top 10 when all was said and done for that of Zilish and Hefner. But it is Cade Brown who is adding a South Carolina 400 win to his racing resume, which appears to be multiplying as time goes on. However, it wasn't without a fight. The driver came up just one spot shy after giving it all he had on the last restart. Is that of our runner-up in Caden Honeycutt, who's standing by with Jacqueline.
Caden led some laps throughout tonight, and you were right there on the back bumper of Cade Brown. But what more did you need for that number 10 in order to take home the South Carolina 400?
Definitely drive. He had a speed right there at the end. The only opportunity I had was out that restart. I was going to run him up, but I didn't want to push him off the racetrack. I was just trying to run it clean and see if I had a shot at it. And I ran right into him. He ran right back into me, so I respect it. Good win to him. He deserved it right there at the end. So I just tried. I just wanted to win it and see what I could do. But I just want to thank Fayetteville, Heat and Air, Arness Race Cars, DreamWorks Motorsports, BSD Shocks, Caswell Glass, all my guys. They did such an amazing job all weekend. We felt like we were up and down, but we prevailed and we were able to come home second. So I'm happy with it. Finally a good run at a late model that hasn't really happened for me the last couple of months. So really needed that and go on to the Classic next week.
Hard-fought battles there. Caden Honeycutt going to bring it home in second place.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And when you look at how Caden's year has unfolded, particularly in this portion of the calendar, you can't help but be impressed by his ability to perform no matter what he is thrown into. Wasn't that long ago, he was helping an ARCA Menard Series West team owned by Steve McGowan and Bruce Cook capture an owner's title by winning 2 races there with that team. And even after wrapping up the ARCA Menard season finale, he flew out to Caraway, won a pro late model race for the first time this season, and then turned his attention to his late model stock car duties. He ends up in second position tonight. As Blake, let's take a look at where some of our front-running finishers came to the checkered flag when this race came to a close.
And it was a heated battle for that second position that Honeycutt had with Carson Quapple, who settles for third. Josh Berry, the second race for KHI here in a late model stock in these last 2 weeks, and looking forward to 2024, what that program has in store. Finishes in fourth tonight. Brendan Queen rounded out your top 5. Landon S. Huffman, a great drive late in the going for that 28H car, finishes in the 6th position. Jacob Hefner, you mentioned a couple of the Carroll Speed Shop cars. They sandwiched themselves in both 7th and 9th. Did that of Hefner and Connor Zilish around Dale Earnhardt Jr., who finished in 8th. And it was Carter Langley, the South Boston Speedway track champion this year, who rounds out your top 10. A great late rebound for that number 5 as well.
Stephen Nassy came up one spot short from a top 10 in the South Carolina 400. He finished 11th. Casey Kelly was up front, top 4 seemingly all race long, faded to 12th there late in the going. Same could be said for that of Laney Bice, who was running in the top 5 before getting shuffled out there in some of the late race restarts. Great rebound for Trent Barnes. That car was sideways a couple of times tonight. 14th. Surprise effort for our pole sitter and locked in 150 winner in Sam Yarbrough, who came home in 15th. Ronnie Bassett Jr. was 16th. Cody Kelly 17th. 18th would be that of Katie Hedinger. Riley Gentry had a quiet run in the 19th spot. And Paul Owens, one of the newcomers to late model stock car racing, takes you through your top 20.
21st was Casey Wyatt in the 29. Final car that was scored on the same lap as your race leader was Anthony Adams in 22nd. Doug Barnes Jr., after his late excursion, finishes in 23rd. David Roberts in 24th. Landon Huffman finished in 25th after an apparent fuel pickup issue for that number 75 car. Bryant Barnhill wrapped up in that lap 216 caution is 26th, along with Josh Williams, who comes home in 27th. Truett Miranda, 28th. Matt Cox was 29th. And Justin Milliken, strong run for that 0-2 bunch, ends in 30th, unfortunately.
The rest of the field sees William Sawalich went off on the hook at 31st. 32nd was that of Tristan McKee. Josh Dickens, after the flip early in this race on lap 77, was okay and will go down in the results as finishing in 33rd. Adam McCumbee was 34th. Brandon Pierce, after breaking a hub on his car, 35th. Zach Miracle, 36th. 37th was Stuart Ricks. And the rest of our field sees Travis Truitt, Stacy Puryear, Boo Boo Dalton, and Mark Wirtz, your 41 cars that came down for the green flag. Unfortunate for Wirtz, he was the first one out with a mechanical issue just 3 laps into this race. You see there the post-race debrief already taking place there amongst the Junior Motorsports operations where, Blake, stark contrast from what we saw here back at the Icebreaker to kick things off here in February. Both the Junior Motorsports operations and cars of both Carson Kvapil and Dale Earnhardt Jr. were kind of wondering what happened to the pace which they expected to have. Tonight, polar opposite of the story. Carson third, Junior eighth.
Yeah, and again, that was a drive up through the field, especially for that of Dale Earnhardt Jr., who struggled a lot with the handling of the car this weekend, and yet ended up with a very respectable finish. And, of course, Kvapil was a part of the running late in the going. He could have thrown his name in the hat to get yet another win at this racetrack in this racing season. But what a job that they did. Again, it was a day of adversity that Junior Motorsports really had to battle through to get those finishes up in the top 10.
Little bit of irony because we've got Carson Kvapil in the 8 car who was third, and then we've also got Dale Jr. in the 8 car. In the 3 car finished in 8th position. So they just pretty much kind of swapped numbers there as far as the final finishing results. But nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that it was quite the enjoyable experience. And we threw up the graphic that in the last 2 years, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has had an average finish of 10th in his late model stock car starts. He's going to help that effort here tonight with that 8th place finish. Let's catch up with the driver of the 3 car, Dale Earnhardt Jr., standing by with Jacqueline.
Guys, we're down here, and Dale's currently putting in his beer order on what he wants after he just exited out of his car. Dale, you have such a more of a smiley face in the South Carolina 400 this year than last year. Things seem to go a little bit smoother. You qualified in 26th, and you finished 8th. Walk me through how your night went there.
Well, I mean, I got to qualify better. I came here during the Darlington week, and we ended up qualifying really good. We raced okay, but I thought it needed to be tighter in the race, so we came here with a little bit different balance, and we knew we weren't going to qualify good. So that's just I got to figure out how to get a little more speed out of the car in qualifying, so I don't have to work so hard in the race. But great race car. I think you could have dropped us anywhere in the top, 10 there, and we'd have finished there, running good lap times there at the end. And everybody just going as hard as they could. Everybody in the top, 5, pretty even. But happy to just be competitive because, we struggled in practice yesterday. We struggled all day today just trying to figure out where we needed to be. We really weren't confident in everything we were doing and what we had for the race tonight, and it turned out to be really good. So I had a lot of fun racing all the competitors. I got into that 7 on the back straightaway. I thought I gave him a lane and a half there, but, it's hard to tell what you're giving somebody when they're in a wall for reference. Well, I felt like I gave him plenty of room. I hated that, but it's so fun. It's so much fun. 250 laps is a lot, but it's a good distance, and I had fun. And I know it was a long race for the fans watching. We had a lot of stuff happen tonight, but I think race control and Steve Zacharias and his whole family, they did an amazing job again this weekend. It's a fun race, a lot of great energy all weekend long. Saw a lot of old friends, so just a good deal. So pretty happy. Wish I could get up there and challenge for a win one of these days, but I think I need to run more races to be able to do that.
Speaking of challenging for a win, in that final restart, you kind of got caught behind a hornet's nest of cars there. Had you had better track position, do you think that you could have been competing for the win?
I think we could have run second. I don't know if anybody could have beat the 23. He was really fast. But I think I could, I think I was about the same as Carson and all those guys. It's just really hard to pass. Actually, the top has kind of come in here, so if you're kind of struggling a little bit, you can hold people off really well, running the high side, and that's kind of made it more difficult to really drive through the field in the last 20 laps. Everybody's saved about the right amount of tire, and the top 10, they take off, and they all run about the same time, and you can hold people off running that top, and I got to learn that top a little bit. I didn't really get up there and do what I needed to do tonight, but maybe I could have found some more speed running that, but just happy to be competitive. Great car. We had both the cars decaled with Bass Pro Shops, and I know Johnny was watching, so hope Johnny Morris had fun. We had some good finishes, and again, I enjoy myself, but you get competitive and you want to run better, so we'll keep trying.
Solid finish tonight here at Florence Motor Speedway, bringing it home in 8th. We're going to let you go ahead and crack a beer, Dale Jr.
Thanks a lot, Jacqueline. That sounds like a pretty good post-game plan for all of us. It's been an incredible last couple of days here. A great assessment there by Dale Earnhardt Jr. I will echo the sentiments in which he expressed for Steve Zacharias, his family, and those who operate this track and this venue. And I'll extend that also to our entire broadcast and production team who arrived here a couple days earlier to set things up. They'll be working well into the night to break things back down. And what a tremendous job by all around to help bring this race, this energy, and this environment to the masses watching at home who weren't fortunate enough to be here. And Blake, I have to say that it's hard to believe that I came into this race kind of curious if we'd be able to surpass some of the excitement we saw in 2022. And I have to say, as we start to close the curtain on the 2023 edition of this race, I think we're walking away pretty entertained.
Again, I think throughout all the races that we saw in the South Carolina 250 and the South Carolina 400, this racetrack knows how to put on some spectacular shows, challenge these drivers, these crews, and teams to the absolute limit. And we have seen that in late model stock car racing all year long, but such a great way for many of these teams. Now, again, still a lot of great late model stock car racing that's going to be left here in just a week. Kinley in a week is going to be where a lot of these teams put their focus towards after this weekend, and that should be a fun one as well. But what a great way to wrap things up here at Florence Motor Speedway. And for those who wrap up their season, they're definitely going to rest well tonight. Take a sigh of relief before looking forward to the icebreaker in a couple months.
So much to look forward to, even still in 2023. A lot of teams already getting set to move on to 2024. It has been an incredible last 2 days here in Tibbetsville, South Carolina. A remarkable job by all involved. The fans came out in droves, and we were entertained by every type of car that we put out here on the racetrack. A fond farewell to the chief starter here at Florence Motor Speedway and John Spence, hanging up the silks after his duties here tonight. But what an incredible evening. A lot of emotion and celebratory efforts by all involved. And we are walking away here with some incredible racing memories as well. It's been an incredible year, 2023, across all platforms, especially those who have been watching along with us on FloRacing in 2023. We can't wait to show you what we've got up our sleeve in 2024. On behalf of Jacqueline Drake, Blake McCandless, I'm Eric Brennan. Congratulations to Cade Brown, the winner of the South Carolina 400 in 2023. We'll see you next time.